Number 1. The resolution limit of reality. What if the world around you, in all of its breathtaking detail, is not what it seems? What if the feeling of solid ground beneath your feet, the endless depth of the sky, and the very texture of your own skin are all part of a masterfully crafted illusion? We live our lives assuming that reality is continuous, that we could zoom in forever and always find more detail. But our own science has stumbled upon a strange and unsettling boundary, a wall at the very edge of existence. Imagine you are watching a movie on the highest definition screen possible. From your seat, the image is perfect, seamless, and utterly real. But if you walk right up to the screen, the illusion shatters. You see that the perfect image is actually made of millions of tiny lights or pixels. You have found the edge of that created world. You have found its resolution limit. Physicists have found a similar limit in our own universe. It's called the Planck length, and it is the smallest possible measurement of space that has any meaning. To try and look at something smaller than the Planck length would be impossible, not because our tools aren't good enough, but because, according to our physics, there is nothing smaller to see. It is the final, indivisible pixel of our reality. Why would a natural, random universe have a pixel size? Why wouldn't it be infinitely smooth? The answer offered by simulation theory is both simple and profound: efficiency. Any computer, no matter how powerful, has limited resources. To create a simulated universe that doesn't crash, you couldn't render everything down to an infinite detail. You would have to set a limit. You would give it a maximum resolution. This is the same reason a video game only renders the part of the world the player is currently looking at. It's a trick to save processing power. Our universe seems to play by the same rules. Quantum mechanics shows us that particles only seem to decide what they are when we are looking at them. Until then, they are just a cloud of possibilities. It's as if the universe is only rendering the details when we, the users, need them. This single discovery of a cosmic pixel is a deep and disturbing clue. It suggests that our reality might be built on a framework, a grid, just like a digital image on a screen. The smooth analog world we experience every day could be a user interface of unimaginable quality, designed to hide the code running underneath. But if our universe is built on a finite grid of pixels, that raises an even more unnerving question. Are these pixels just scattered randomly, or do they obey a set of rules? Is there a logic, a kind of program, that tells each and every one of these pixels how to behave? This thought leads us directly from the structure of our world to the laws that govern it, and to our second clue, a mystery that points not just to a simulated space, but to a simulated system running on a code of impossible precision. Number 2. The strange precision of mathematical laws. If the first clue suggests our reality is built upon a grid of cosmic pixels, the second clue asks a far deeper question. What tells those pixels what to do? The answer is found in a mystery so profound we often overlook it entirely: the strange, unwavering power of mathematics. It begins with a truth so simple it feels innate. 1 + 1 will always equal 1. Add another, and it will always equal 2. This isn't just an opinion or a theory. It is a fundamental law of logic, a rule that cannot be broken. Now, take that perfect certainty and watch as it expands to govern the entire cosmos. The laws of physics, from the gentle pull of gravity holding you in your seat to the violent fusion reactions powering the core of the sun, are not written in suggestions. They are written in the precise, unambiguous language of mathematics. They were operating with perfect accuracy for billions of years before humanity ever evolved to discover them. We didn't invent these laws, we simply stumbled upon the rulebook for our own existence. The physicist Eugene Wigner called this the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics, a feeling of awe and disbelief that abstract concepts dreamed up in the minds of mathematicians just happen to be the perfect tools to describe the universe. It's as if a man found a mysterious key in his pocket and later discovered it perfectly fit the ignition of an alien spaceship. The connection is too perfect to be a coincidence. Consider the story of Albert Einstein. Working not in a lab, but with a pen and paper, he formulated his theory of general relativity. Guided by principles of mathematical beauty and consistency, his equations told him something extraordinary: that gravity was not a force, but a curvature in the very fabric of space and time. His math predicted that light from a distant star should bend as it passes the massive gravity of our sun. It was a bizarre, abstract idea born from pure equations. Years later, astronomers waited for a solar eclipse, pointed their instruments to the sky, and saw it. The starlight was bent, exactly as Einstein's math had predicted. The code on the blackboard was running the cosmos. The simulation hypothesis provides a chillingly logical explanation for this mystery. If our reality is a computer program, it must run on a strict logical language. Its operating system would be mathematics. The immutable laws of physics are not a cosmic mystery. They are the core functions and subroutines of the simulation's code, executing with perfect fidelity to ensure the program remains stable and consistent. The constants that pop up everywhere in science, like pi or the fine structure constant, are the hard-coded variables the system uses to build reality. From this perspective, a universe born from random chance would not be expected to be so elegant, so logical, so perfectly comprehensible. But a universe designed as a simulation would have to be. Its foundation would be information and logic, not chaos. The most surreal part is that we, the inhabitants of this potential program, have somehow evolved the ability to read the code. Every scientific breakthrough, every new equation that perfectly describes a corner of our universe, is another line of the source code being deciphered. We are slowly reverse engineering the software of our own reality. This leaves us standing before a profound revelation. We have a universe that appears to be built from pixels, and these pixels appear to be governed by an astonishingly precise mathematical code. But this leads to the next logical question. If the world is just information, what is the solid stuff we touch and feel? What happens when you reach out to interact with this world of code? The answer is perhaps the most reality-bending clue of all, for it suggests that the very concept of solid matter is the grandest illusion the simulation has to offer. Number 3. Why nothing is truly solid. Take a moment to perform a simple action. Rest your hand on the table in front of you. Feel its undeniable solidity. Feel the pressure, the texture, the absolute certainty that it is there. Your senses are telling you a fundamental truth about the world. It is solid, it is real, and it pushes back. This experience is the foundation of our entire interaction with reality. But what if this feeling of solidity is the most profound and persuasive illusion the universe has ever created? Science, in its relentless quest to understand the building blocks of matter, has arrived at a conclusion that defies all common sense. The atom, the fundamental unit of the matter that makes up your hand in the table, is 99.9999% empty space. If the nucleus of an atom were the size of a marble placed in the center of a giant sports stadium, The electrons would be like grains of sand whirling around in the outermost bleachers. The rest would be pure, empty void. So, if your hand and the table are both almost entirely empty space, what are you actually feeling when you touch them? You are not feeling matter colliding with matter. You are feeling a force. The electrons in the atoms of your hand are repelling the electrons in the atoms of the table due to their negative electrical charges. The sensation of touch is nothing more than two force fields pushing against each other. You have never truly touched anything in your entire life. This is a scientific fact, but from the perspective of the simulation hypothesis, it is also a masterstroke of efficient design. Why would a simulation bother to render trillions of atoms as truly solid objects, a process that would require an unimaginable amount of data and processing power? It's far more efficient to simply program a rule. When the force field of object A gets too close to the force field of object B, they cannot pass through each other. This is the exact principle behind collision detection in video games. When your character runs into a wall, they don't stop because the wall is made of solid digital bricks. They stop because the game's physics engine is running a simple rule that forbids the character's model from occupying the same coordinates as the wall's model. The sensation of solidity we feel is the user interface feedback from that rule. It's a haptic response from the simulation, telling us that a boundary has been reached. Our entire tangible world, with all its weight, substance, and texture, might just be an incredibly sophisticated system of interlocking force fields and collision rules, running on a foundation of almost complete emptiness. The universe isn't a collection of things, it's a collection of rules. It's a physical world simulated through informational logic. We believe we live in a world of substance, but we may just be living in a world of incredibly convincing data. This unsettling thought that both we and the world are ghosts of empty space, governed by invisible rules, brings us to the next phantom in our reality. We've questioned the solidity of space and matter, but what about the one thing that feels like it's always moving forward, solid and relentless? What if the flow of time itself is also just a feature of the program? A feature that can sometimes lag, stretch, and even break. Number 4. When time slows without cause. Think back to a moment of sudden, heart-stopping crisis. Perhaps it was a car swerving towards you, a glass slipping from your hand and tumbling towards the floor, or a sudden fall. In those fleeting seconds, many people report a bizarre and unforgettable phenomenon. The world seems to slow down. Time itself appears to stretch, to dilate, allowing for a flood of thoughts and observations that would be impossible in a normal moment. The shattering glass seems to hang in the air, each shard rotating in slow motion. You see every detail of the impending accident with a strange, detached clarity. This experience is often dismissed as a trick of memory, our brains simply recording more information in a state of high alert, making the event feel longer in retrospect. But what if it's not a trick? What if it is a real-time property of the system we are in? What if, in moments of extreme crisis, we are personally experiencing a system lag? From a computational perspective, this makes perfect sense. Imagine our reality is a simulation running on a vast but finite processor. Most of the time, the processing load is manageable. The simulation can render our reality, handle the physics of our interactions, and maintain the illusion of a smooth, consistent temporal flow. But a crisis is different. A car crash, a fall, a life-or-death situation. These are moments of intense computational demand. The system suddenly needs to calculate complex physics, predict multiple potential outcomes, process your body's extreme biological stress responses,
and record a massive amount of sensory data all at once. What happens when you overload a computer's processor? It slows down, the frame rate drops, the program lags. For the user inside that program, the experience would be exactly like the bullet time effect we see in movies and video games. The world wouldn't actually be slowing down. Rather, the simulation would be dedicating so many processing cycles to that single critical event that the user's perception of time passing would stretch out relative to the world outside the event. You are granted more frames of experience per second because the system is overclocking its resources to handle your specific situation. This subjective time dilation is not predicted by our known laws of physics. It is a glitch in our personal experience, a feature of our consciousness. It suggests that time is not a constant universal river, but rather a resource allocated by a central system. Most of the time, the allocation is stable. But when the demand spikes, the system has to make a choice. Either let the simulation crash or slow down the local processing speed to handle the load. The fact that we experience this slowdown suggests the system is designed to preserve the user, to give its inhabitants every possible computational advantage in a moment of crisis. Our very survival could be dependent on the simulation's frame rate. But if the system can stretch and bend time in the present, what about its relationship with the past and future? Our minds seem to experience these temporal glitches in moments of crisis. But what if there was an experiment, a repeatable, scientifically proven experiment, that shows the future can literally reach back and change the past? This isn't a feeling. It's a measured phenomenon that tears up the rulebook of time and points to our next most baffling clue.
Number 5. The Delayed Choice Quantum Eraser. Prepare yourself for a journey into the heart of quantum weirdness, to an experiment so confounding that it challenges the very nature of past, present, and future. It's called the Delayed Choice Quantum Eraser, and it is perhaps the single most compelling piece of scientific evidence that our reality behaves like a simulation. The experiment, in its simplest form, works like this. Imagine firing a single particle of light, a photon, at a screen with 2 slits. If you don't watch which slit the photon goes through, it behaves like a wave and miraculously passes through both slits at the same time, creating a distinct interference pattern on the detector wall behind it. However, if you place a detector at the slits to see which path it took, the photon instantly chooses one slit and behaves like a simple particle, creating a completely different pattern on the wall. This is the standard observer effect. Observing it changes its behavior. But the delayed choice experiment adds an insidious, time-bending twist. The scientists let the photon pass through the slits without watching. It has already made its journey and hit the detector wall. Its past should be set in stone. But here is the trick. After the photon has already landed, the scientists then have the option to look at a secondary tagging particle that holds the which slit information. If they choose to look at this information, the pattern on the wall retroactively becomes the one made by particles. If they choose to erase this information before looking at it, the pattern on the wall retroactively becomes the one made by waves. Let this sink in. A choice made in the present appears to be changing a decision the particle made in the past. It is as if the universe holds its breath, refusing to commit to a definite history until it is absolutely forced to. It's like finding footprints on a beach leading to a locked room, and the footprints only appear after you decide to unlock the door. This behavior makes no sense in a classical bottom-up universe where the past determines the future. But in a simulation, it is the most efficient way to run a system.
It is the principle of lazy rendering on a cosmic scale. The simulation doesn't need to calculate and render a definitive history for a particle until an observer asks for that data. Why waste processing power on a past that no one has looked at? So, the system keeps the particle's history in a state of flux, a quantum superposition of all possibilities. The moment a conscious observer requests the data by making a measurement, the simulation instantly collapses all those possibilities and renders a single, consistent history that aligns with the measurement. The past is not a fixed videotape. It is a rewritable hard drive, and the save command is only initiated by the act of observation. The delayed choice experiment is a stunning demonstration of this. It shows that information, not matter, is the fundamental building block of the universe, and that the timeline is not a solid line, but a dynamic, editable data stream. The universe does not have a past until we look at it. This idea is so powerful, it moves from the laboratory to our own minds. If physics shows that our choices can influence the past on a quantum level, what if our own brains are performing a similar trick every single moment of every day? What if your mind sometimes gets access to information just a fraction of a second before you consciously perceive the event itself?
Number 6. When your mind predicts before seeing. We have seen how a choice in the present can seemingly alter an event in the past within a laboratory setting. But what if this temporal strangeness is not confined to quantum experiments? What if it is happening inside your own mind right now? We are talking about those fleeting, almost imperceptible moments of intuition, the uncanny feeling of knowing something a split second before it happens. You reach to catch a falling cup, your hand moving almost before your conscious mind has registered the slip. You get a sudden, unexplainable bad feeling just moments before receiving bad news. You know what a person is going to say, finishing their sentence in your mind. We usually label these experiences as quick reflexes or subconscious pattern recognition. Our brains are, after all, masterful prediction machines, constantly analyzing subtle cues, a slight tremor in a hand, a micro-expression on a face, a change in vocal tone, to guess what will happen next. But some scientific experiments suggest something far stranger is at play, something that goes beyond mere prediction. In several studies, subjects have been shown to have a measurable physical, emotional, or neurological response to a randomly selected dramatic image a fraction of a second before the image is actually displayed on the screen. Their heart rate changes, their brain activity shifts, as if they are already reacting to an event that has not yet occurred. The effect is small, but statistically significant, and it has resisted easy explanation. It's as if, on some deep level, the mind is receiving information about the future. Within the framework of a simulation, this phenomenon could be explained as a simple processing delay, or what gamers would call lag or latency. Imagine your consciousness is a user or a client connected to the main simulation server. The server is constantly feeding your brain data streams that you interpret as reality: visual data, auditory data, event data. In any complex information network, not all data packets arrive at the exact same time. It's possible that the event data, the information packet that says a scary image is about to be shown, could, due to a quirk in the system's architecture, arrive and be processed by your subconscious a few milliseconds before the visual data packet that actually renders the image through your eyes. For that brief moment, your mind knows what's coming before you see it. These moments of micro-precognition are not you being psychic. They are simply you experiencing the slight, unavoidable network latency of the simulation. It's the system's data stream becoming slightly desynchronized. This would also explain that feeling of being in the zone
during sports or other high-speed activities, where you seem to react without thinking. You are not just predicting the opponent's move. Your consciousness is synced so perfectly with the data stream that you are processing events with near zero latency, acting on information the very instant it becomes available in the system. Our brain is not just a passive receiver. It is an active terminal, constantly handshaking with the server of reality. And sometimes we get a glimpse of the packets as they arrive. This idea that our brain is actively processing and even anticipating the data stream leads us to consider the very window through which we see the world. If our brain is filling in these tiny gaps in time, what about the giant, permanent gap that surrounds us at all times? I am talking about the edges of your own vision.
Number 7. Why you can't see the edges of your vision. Take a moment to try something. Without moving your eyes, pay attention to the absolute limits of your sight. What do you see at the edge of your peripheral vision? You might perceive a blur, a fading of color and detail. But what you don't perceive is a hard edge. You don't see a black frame like you're looking through a submarine's periscope. Your visual field doesn't end in a defined box or circle. It just stops. It fades into a conceptual nothingness that your brain simply ignores. This is a profound mystery hidden in plain sight. We know our field of view is limited, yet we never perceive its boundary. Why? The common explanation is that our brain is a master of trickery. It cleverly stitches together the information it receives from our eyes. And where the information stops, the brain just doesn't bother to create an edge. It creates a seamless experience, hiding its own limitations from us. This is undoubtedly true, but from a simulation perspective, this is not just a trick of the brain. It's a fundamental feature of system optimization. It is a classic resource-saving technique used in every 3D video game and virtual reality environment ever created. It's called frustum culling. Imagine you are a character in a video game. The game's engine only needs to render the part of the world that is inside your character's field of view, a cone extending from the virtual camera. Everything behind you, above you, or outside that cone is not rendered. To do so would be a colossal waste of processing power. The system only computes and draws what the user can see. Our reality appears to operate on the exact same principle. The simulation doesn't need to render the entire 360-degree universe around you in high-fidelity detail at all times. It only needs to render the frustum, the cone of perception that your consciousness is currently pointed at. The reason you don't see the edges of your vision is because, in a computational sense, there are no edges to see. There is simply the rendered world inside your view and the unrendered void outside of it. Your brain doesn't create a black frame because the simulation isn't feeding it black frame data. It is feeding it no data, and your brain's operating system is programmed to interpret no data as a seamless continuation of your experience. This is an incredibly elegant solution to the problem of finite computational resources. The simulation provides the illusion of a complete, persistent world, while secretly only rendering a tiny fraction of it at any given moment. We are all walking through reality with our own personal rendering bubble. This is why the world always seems to pop into detail just as you turn your head or focus your attention on something. It is the system's renderer catching up with your intention, loading the high-resolution textures just in time. The fact that our perception is limited in this specific, computationally efficient way is a powerful clue. It suggests our senses are not just biological tools, but are perhaps hardware peripherals
designed to interface with the simulation in the most optimal way possible. This then leads to an even more revolutionary idea. If the brain is so good at faking the edges of our vision, what else is it faking? What if it's not just filling in the gaps, but is in fact generating most of what we see?
Number 8. The brain as a pattern generator, not receiver. For centuries, we have held a very intuitive belief about perception, that our eyes, ears, and other senses are like cameras or microphones, passively receiving a rich, detailed stream of information from the outside world. The world sends the signal, and the brain simply processes it. But what if this entire model is backwards? Modern neuroscience is converging on a radical new theory that turns this idea on its head. The theory states that your brain is not a passive receiver of information. Instead, it is an active, always-on reality generator. It is a prediction machine. Right now, your brain is running a complete, detailed simulation of what it thinks the world should look and feel like, based on all your past experiences and memories. The data that comes in from your senses, the light hitting your retinas, the sound waves hitting your eardrums, is not the main event. It is merely a sparse stream of error correction data. Most of what you perceive as reality is not the world itself, but your brain's own internally generated model of the world. The incoming sensory information is just used to update that model and fix any discrepancies. You can see this principle in action all the time. Have you ever read a sentence where a word is misspelled, but your brain reads it correctly anyway? That's because your brain didn't just read the data. It generated the word it expected to see based on the context, and the misspelling wasn't a big enough error to force a correction. Optical illusions work on the same principle. They are specifically designed to exploit the shortcuts and assumptions in your brain's reality-generating software. From the perspective of the simulation hypothesis, this is a system of breathtaking efficiency. Think of the bandwidth required to send a constant, high-definition, 360-degree stream of reality data to every single conscious being in the universe. The data load would be astronomical. It is far more efficient to install a powerful graphics processor, the brain, locally in each user. The main simulation server doesn't have to send you the whole world. It just has to send you a tiny, compressed data stream of updates and changes. Object A moved from coordinate X to coordinate Y. Your brain then takes that simple data packet and does the heavy lifting of rendering how that looks, sounds, and feels within the detailed model it's already running. What you are experiencing as consciousness is not a window looking out onto the world. It is the experience of living inside your own brain's high-fidelity, predictive simulation. A simulation that is constantly being nudged and corrected by a trickle of data from an external source. This explains why our beliefs and expectations have such a powerful effect on our perception. If you strongly believe a noise you heard was a threat, your brain will begin to generate a reality consistent with that belief, making you feel fear and sharpening your hearing long before you have any more data. You're not just reacting to the world, you are co-creating it with the simulation. This model of the brain as a local generator suggests we are all running a personal copy of the simulation software. But if that's true, even the best software can sometimes lag or glitch, especially when moving between different environments. This brings us to the strange, common, and deeply unsettling glitches we experience in our own spatial awareness. Number 9. Glitches in spatial awareness. We've considered that your brain might be a powerful graphics engine generating your reality based on a stream of data. But any complex software running on complex hardware is prone to the occasional bug or loading error. And it seems we experience these exact kinds of glitches in our daily lives, particularly when it comes to our sense of space and intention. Consider the doorway effect, a phenomenon so common it's been scientifically studied. You decide you need something from another room. You stand up, full of purpose, walk into that room, and then blank. Your intention, the very reason for your journey, has vanished from your mind. It's as if passing through the doorway triggered a memory wipe. Psychologists suggest that doorways act as event boundaries in our minds, signaling the end of one mental scene and the beginning of another, sometimes causing us to lose the thread of our thoughts. From a simulation perspective, this is a classic loading error. Moving from one room to another is like moving from one level or zone to another in a video game. As you cross the threshold, the simulation may be deloading the assets and scripts from the previous room while loading the new ones for the current room. In that brief moment of transition, the data packet containing your intention or quest objective can be momentarily lost or dropped. Your short-term memory buffer is cleared to make way for the new environmental data. Then there is the deeply strange feeling of jamais vu, the opposite of déjà vu. This is when you look at a place you know intimately, your own bedroom, your street, your office, and for a few moments it feels completely alien and unfamiliar. The logical part of your brain knows where you are, but the feeling of recognition is gone. It's unsettling. In simulation terms, this could be a texture or asset failing to load its familiarity property. The raw geometry of the room is rendered, but the metadata tag that links it to your memories and emotions fails to initialize correctly. For a few seconds, you are seeing the world with a corrupted cache. These small but frequent glitches, getting momentarily lost in your own neighborhood, turning the wrong way down a street you've walked 1,000 times, that feeling of disorientation, are all hallmarks of a complex system with minor bugs. They are the background errors you might see in the debug log of a massive program. They suggest that our consciousness and memory are not a single seamless entity, but a collection of data and processes that are constantly being loaded, updated, and sometimes incorrectly handled by the system. Our awareness of our place in the world is not a given. It is an active calculation, and that calculation can sometimes return an error. These glitches happen in our personal, subjective space. But what if there is a glitch, or rather a feature, that is permanent and objective? What if there is an anomaly hanging in the sky for all of us to see? A spatial feature so perfect and so strange, it looks less like a cosmic coincidence and more like a deliberate and highly efficient design choice.
Number 10. Why the moon is always facing you. Gaze up at the night sky, and you will see the most dominant and familiar feature of our celestial neighborhood, the moon. It has been a source of wonder, myth, and science for all of human history. Yet it holds a secret in plain sight, a fact so strange that it borders on the unnatural. We only ever see one side of it. The moon is tidally locked with the Earth, meaning it rotates on its axis at the exact same rate that it revolves around our planet. The result is a perfect, perpetual synchronization, where one hemisphere, the near side, constantly faces us, while the far side remains forever hidden from our direct view. Scientists have a solid physical explanation for this: the gravitational pull of the Earth creating a tidal bulge on the moon over billions of years, which slowed its rotation until it locked into this stable state. This is the accepted scientific lore. But from a design perspective, from the perspective of someone building a universe, this arrangement is suspiciously convenient and incredibly efficient. Why would a simulation, which must be mindful of its computational resources, bother to fully create, texture, and render a whole other side of a celestial body if the inhabitants of the simulation are never going to see it. This is the ultimate expression of lazy rendering applied to cosmology. The moon, from our vantage point, could be thought of less as a dynamic spherical object and more as a skybox element, a beautiful high-resolution image hanging in the sky, designed to give the impression of a living cosmos. For most of human history, the far side of the moon was a complete unknown, a blank space on the map. It did not need to exist in detail in the simulation because no user had the capability to access it. Only when our technology evolved to the point of sending probes and astronauts did the simulation need to render the far side's details. The complex physics of tidal locking becomes the perfect in-universe justification for this resource-saving design choice. It provides a logical, natural-feeling reason for an arrangement that is, at its core, a computational shortcut. It hides the trick in plain sight, using the very laws of the simulation to explain its own optimized features. Think of it like a background mountain range in a video game. From a distance, it looks detailed and majestic, but if you were somehow able to glitch your way over to it, you would likely find it is a simple low-polygon model with a flat texture painted on it, because the game's designers never intended for you to see it up close. The moon's perfect, constant face could be the same thing. It is a breathtakingly beautiful and constant presence in our sky, a source of light and wonder. But its unnatural, unwavering gaze might also be a clue, a permanent reminder that the universe may not be designed for objective reality, but for the subjective experience of its observers. And for us, the observers, one side was always enough. This brings part 1 to a close. We have looked at the cracks in our perception of space, time, and matter. Now we must turn inward, to the glitches that occur not in the world, but within our own minds. We will explore the strange territory of shared false memories, of precognitive dreams, and the haunting feeling that time itself is not a line, but a loop.
Number 11. False memories shared by millions. The Mandela Effect. We have explored the world around us and the physics that governs it. But now we must turn to the most unreliable narrator of all, human memory. Our memories define who we are. They are the bedrock of our identity and our shared history. But what happens when that bedrock cracks? What happens when millions of people share a vivid, specific memory of something that never actually happened? This is the phenomenon known as the Mandela Effect, a modern mystery named after the widespread false memory of Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s when he actually passed away as a free man in 2013. This is not just a single case. A vast number of people distinctly remember a movie called Shazam, starring the comedian Sinbad as a genie, a movie that never existed. Millions would swear that the popular children's book series was spelled the Berenstain Bears with an E, yet every existing copy shows it as Berenstain with an A. They remember the Monopoly Man with a monocle, C-3PO being entirely gold, and Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father." But the Monopoly Man has no monocle. C-3PO has always had a silver leg, and the iconic line is simply, "No, I am your father." The standard explanation is confabulation, our minds creating false memories by mixing up similar information. It's a trick of the brain, amplified by the internet. But the sheer scale and specificity of these shared memories demand a deeper look. The simulation hypothesis offers a chillingly technical explanation. These are not memory errors. They are evidence of a previous version of reality.
Imagine our universe is a living document on a cosmic server, a document that can be edited. What we call the Mandela effect could be the result of a retcon, or retroactive continuity. A small detail in the simulation's code was changed, a patch was applied, and a line in the historical database was updated. Perhaps Berenstain was deemed a better fit, or the legal rights to the name Shazam were an issue in some meta-reality. The change is pushed live, and the fabric of reality realigns itself to this new truth. However, the update isn't perfect. The memories of the users, our minds, are not always flawlessly overwritten. Millions of us are left with residual data, a ghost in the machine, a memory fragment from the old version of the world. We are walking around with a corrupted cache file from a previous patch. This would mean that the people who remember Berenstain aren't wrong. They are just remembering an overwritten timeline. Their memory is a fossil from a dead reality. This theory reframes the Mandela effect from a psychological quirk into evidence of a dynamic, editable universe. It suggests that history is not a fixed, immutable past, but a programmable data file. We are not just living in the simulation, we are living in the latest software version of it. The existence of these shared memory glitches implies that the data of our world can be changed. But this raises an even more personal question. If the past can be overwritten for everyone, what happens when the simulation's processes glitch not for the whole world, but just for you? This leads us to the deeply personal and disorienting feelings of having lived this exact moment before.
Number 12. Déjà vu and precognitive dreams. It is one of the most common and unnerving experiences a human can have. You walk into a room for the first time, yet a wave of familiarity washes over you. You know the way the light hits the window, the placement of the furniture, the feeling of the air. The conversation you are having, you have had it before. For a fleeting moment, you are certain you have lived this exact scene. This is déjà vu, French for already seen, a glitch in our consciousness that is as baffling as it is brief. But sometimes, this feeling is preceded by something even stranger, a precognitive dream. You have a mundane, forgettable dream about dropping a specific coffee mug, only to watch the same mug slip from your grasp the next morning, shattering in the exact same way. How can this be? The neurological explanation for déjà vu is that it's a momentary brain misfire, a slight delay in processing that causes a new experience to be incorrectly tagged as an old memory. Precognitive dreams are often dismissed as pure coincidence, or our brains connecting subconscious observations. But the sheer specificity of these experiences deserves a more profound explanation, one that the simulation hypothesis provides with startling clarity. Let's start with déjà vu. Imagine the simulation is constantly calculating the optimal path forward for every entity within it. Now, what if the system, in processing your immediate future, encounters a minor error or a potential paradox? What if your choice is about to cause a small system conflict? To resolve this, the simulation might perform a micro-reboot of your immediate consciousness. It quickly reloads your state from a save point just a few seconds prior, with the conflict now resolved. For you, the user, the experience would be seamless, except for one thing: a lingering data trace of the original discarded moment. That trace is déjà vu. You feel like you've been there before, because in a very real computational sense, your data file has. You are experiencing the echo of a deleted timeline. Now consider precognitive dreams. Our sleep state could be seen as an offline mode for our consciousness, a time when our system undergoes maintenance, defragmentation, and data synchronization with the main server. During this sync, what if data packets intended for your future get leaked? What if the script for a future scene is accidentally downloaded into your dream-generating module? The dream you have is not a fantasy. It is a glimpse of the code for an upcoming event. You are seeing a fragment of the script before it is scheduled to be performed. In this model, déjà vu is a system reload, and a precognitive dream is a data leak from the server. Both phenomena turn from neurological quirks into evidence of a computational process. They suggest our consciousness is a data stream, one that can be paused, reloaded, and can sometimes receive packets out of sequence. Our minds are not just living in time, they are interfacing with a system that actively manages and computes it. If we can experience these small reloaded moments and glimpse future data, it begs a bigger question. Are these just isolated glitches, or are they hints of a much larger, more structured pattern? What if time isn't a straight line at all, but a path we are destined to walk again and again? Number 13. Why time feels like a loop. We've explored the fleeting glitches of déjà vu, but now let's zoom out and consider a much larger feeling, one that grows as we age. It's the sense that life is repeating itself, that we are caught in a great cosmic loop. On a personal level, you find yourself facing the same core challenges, falling into the same patterns in relationships, and meeting different people who feel like variations of the same character archetype. On a grander scale, we see history repeating itself. Empires rise and fall, ideologies clash, and humanity seems to wrestle with the same fundamental flaws generation after generation. We call this human nature, or we say the more things change, the more they stay the same. But what if this cyclical nature of existence is not a philosophical observation, but a literal feature of the system's architecture? What if we are living inside a simulation that runs on loops? In computer programming, a loop is a fundamental tool. It's a block of code that is designed to repeat itself until a certain condition is met. Loops are incredibly efficient. Why write a million lines of unique code when you can write a few lines and have them run a million times? A simulation of our universe's scale would almost certainly have to rely on loops, algorithms, and recurring subroutines to function. What we perceive as life's repeating patterns could be the simulation rerunning a scenario, perhaps with slightly different parameters each time. This could be a form of training. The system might be trying to teach you or your consciousness a specific lesson. Until you learn it, until the correct exit condition is met, the program will continue to loop that scenario in your life path. It's a cosmic tutorial level, and you can't advance until you master the skill. Alternatively, it could be a method of data collection. The simulation might be a giant research project, an ancestor simulation designed to see how people react in certain situations. By running the same historical loops or personal challenges over and over again with small variations, the simulators can gather a vast amount of data on consciousness and choice. This also explains the feeling of archetypes, the recurring character types we meet.
These might be calls to a standard NPC or non-player character subroutine. The simulation needs a mentor figure or an antagonist in your story, so it runs the appropriate script, generating a character that fits the required role. They feel familiar because they are running on the same underlying code as a similar character you met years ago. This perspective changes everything. The feeling of being stuck in a rut isn't just a psychological state, it's a literal feedback mechanism from the system. History repeating itself is not a tragedy of human ignorance, it's the simulation running its primary loops. We are not moving randomly into an unknown future. We are actors in a grand repeating play, and the script is far more structured than we think. This leads us to wonder about the other worlds our minds create. If our waking life runs on loops and consistent physics, what about the chaotic world of our dreams? Is it pure randomness, or does it too have a hidden and surprisingly consistent set of rules?
Number 14. The consistency of dream physics. We tend to think of our dreams as realms of pure chaos and boundless imagination, where the laws of reality are gleefully tossed aside. In dreams, we can fly, breathe underwater, or talk to animals. But if you pay close attention, you might notice something strange. Your dreams, as bizarre as they are, often follow their own consistent set of rules. Your dream world has its own unique physics. For example, you might find that in your dreams you can fly, but only by swimming through the air with great effort. You can't just will yourself into the sky. You have to obey your dream's specific law of flight. Or perhaps you often have dreams where you need to run from something, but your legs feel like they are moving through thick honey, a personal, recurring rule of dream world inertia. You might have a specific dream location, a house, a city, that you return to again and again over the years, a place that does not exist in the waking world, but has its own stable geography and history every time you visit it in your sleep. Why would a supposedly random creation of our subconscious have such consistent, personalized rules? Why isn't it different every single time? The simulation hypothesis suggests an answer. Our dream state is not chaos. It is a separate, sandboxed simulation environment. When you go to sleep, your consciousness is not turned off. It is simply logged out of the main waking reality server and logged into a local, personal dream server. This dream server is a safe space, a debug mode for the mind. It has its own physics engine, separate from the primary simulation. This is why you can break the rules of the real world. The processing load is much lower, and the normal constraints are turned off. The consistency of your personal dream physics is because you are running the same dreamengine.exe every night. The specific way you fly or run is a property of your personal software. The recurring dream locations are not just memories. They are saved levels, cached environments in your personal simulation space that your consciousness can reload. This sandbox environment could serve several purposes. It could be a place for the system to process and defragment your memories from the day, integrating them into your personal data file without the risk of corrupting your waking experience. It could be a training ground, a place to run threat simulations and practice responses in a zero-risk environment. It could even be the simulation's equivalent of a screensaver, an activity to keep your conscious process running while the main system performs diagnostics on your avatar. Seen through this lens, dreams are no longer just random neural firings. They are a window into the back end of the simulation. The consistency of their strange physics is a clue that our mind, when detached from the main server of reality, still operates within a structured, rule-based computational system.
It is a simulation within a simulation. If our minds can enter these alternate sandboxes with their own rules, it makes you wonder about the transitions between states. What about that feeling just before a major, life-altering event in the main simulation? That moment of strange calm before the storm, which feels less like an emotion and more like the system itself is holding its breath.
Number 15. The save point feeling before a crisis. Beyond the slowing of time in a physical accident, there is a different, more subtle feeling that many people report experiencing before a major, life-altering event. It is not a moment of panic, but its exact opposite, a moment of profound, almost unnatural calm and clarity. It happens right before a pivotal decision, a life-changing conversation, or a step onto a new path from which there is no return. It's the quiet moment before you propose marriage, or before you decide to quit your job and move across the country, or in the silent seconds before a doctor delivers a momentous diagnosis. In these moments, the background noise of the world seems to fade away. The chaos of your own thoughts goes silent. There is only a single sharp point of focus and a strange sense of inevitability and significance. It feels as if the universe itself is holding its breath, waiting for your next move. What is this strange, serene feeling? From a simulation perspective, this is the emotional and sensory feedback of the system creating a save point. In any complex video game, especially before a difficult boss battle or a major story branch, the game automatically saves your progress. This ensures that if you fail or make a choice you regret, you can return to this exact moment and try again. The game creates a data backup of your character, your inventory, and the state of the world. It is a critical function for any complex narrative system. Our reality, if it is a simulation with narrative elements, would almost certainly need such a feature. Before your consciousness is about to enter a period of high risk or a major branching path in its programmed story arc, the main system would need to create a secure backup of your current state. The save point feeling is you, the user, subconsciously detecting this process. The sense of calm is the result of the system momentarily pausing the non-essential subroutines of your consciousness. The anxiety, the internal monologue, the random thoughts, in order to dedicate all processing power to creating a clean, uncorrupted data snapshot. The feeling of heightened clarity and focus is because the system has highlighted the critical choice, the one variable that the save point is being created for. The world fades away because, for that moment, the only thing that matters to the simulation's narrative engine is the decision you are about to make. This experience suggests that our lives may not be a single, continuous stream of irreversible moments. Instead, it could be a series of levels or chapters punctuated by these critical save points. It implies a structure, a narrative design that is carefully managed. It also raises a tantalizing, if unprovable, possibility. If the system is saving our state, does that mean that in some other reality, some other branch of the simulation, we have been restored to that save point to try a different path? Are there ghost versions of ourselves living out the consequences of the choices we didn't make? This feeling of a structured, managed life experience is reinforced by another strange pattern. The feeling that not only are there save points, but that sometimes the system forces us to replay the same level over and over with just the slightest of changes. Number 16. When reality repeats with slight variations. Life is full of patterns, but sometimes those patterns become so specific and recurrent that they feel less like coincidence and more like a script. This is a phenomenon distinct from déjà vu. It is not about reliving a single moment, but about experiencing a whole scenario, a complete narrative block, repeating itself in your life with only minor details changed. You might find yourself in the same type of dysfunctional relationship over and over again, where your partner is a different person, but the core issues, the arguments, and the eventual outcome are eerily identical. You might face the same specific professional challenge at every job you take, a unique obstacle that seems to follow you from company to company. It's the feeling of being an actor who is forced to perform the same scene again and again, but with a different cast each time. The common psychological take is that we are unconsciously drawn to what is familiar, and we repeat patterns until we learn the underlying lesson. But the simulation hypothesis offers a more direct and systematic explanation. The simulation is deliberately rerunning a script. Why would it do this? There are two compelling possibilities: training and data collection. Consider the training hypothesis first. If you are a conscious agent within the simulation, your purpose might be to learn, grow, or evolve in some way. When you fail to pass a certain test or learn a crucial lesson, the system doesn't just let you move on. It reinitializes the scenario. It loads the same script, but populates it with new characters and a slightly different setting and runs the simulation again. The universe is essentially forcing you to replay the level until you get it right. The frustration and exhaustion you feel from this repeating pattern is not just in your head. It's game fatigue. You are literally stuck in a tutorial loop designed by the system to teach you something. The second possibility is data collection. Our reality could be a massive experiment designed to gather information on choice and consequence. The simulators running the program might want to see how different variables affect the outcome of a specific scenario. So they take a control subject, you, and run the same event sequence multiple times, changing just one or two key parameters each time. What happens if the subject is given a supportive partner versus an unsupportive one in this career challenge? They run the script, record the outcome, then reset the loop and run it again with the new variable. In this case, you are not a player being trained. You are a data point in a cosmic research project. This perspective recasts our most stubborn life patterns as something more than personal baggage. They are evidence of a structured, iterative process. They are the simulation's algorithms at work, tangible proof of a script that is running and rerunning in the background of our lives. But if the simulation can glitch with entire scenarios, what about the smaller details? What happens when the system misplaces a single simple piece of data, leading to a direct conflict between your memory and the physical world? Number 17. The misplaced memory syndrome. This is one of the most maddening and concrete glitches of daily life. You remember with absolute, unshakable certainty performing a specific action. You remember the physical sensation of placing your car keys on the hook by the door. You can mentally replay the entire sequence, the feel of the metal, the sound they made, the visual of them hanging there. Your memory of this event is a solid, 100% complete data file. A few moments later, you go to retrieve your keys, and they are not there. You search the whole house in a state of growing frustration, only to find them in a completely illogical place, like inside the refrigerator or on the bathroom sink. The conflict is absolute. Your memory, which feels like a perfect recording of a past event,
is in direct opposition to the physical state of reality. The standard explanation is simple human error. We are absent-minded, our memories are faulty, and we were on autopilot. But the feeling of certainty is often so strong that this explanation feels hollow. It doesn't account for the vividness and completeness of the false memory. The simulation hypothesis, however, provides a model that perfectly accounts for this feeling. It suggests this is a data write error or a desynchronization between your personal memory file and the main world server. Here is how it could work. Your intention and action, "I am placing my keys on the hook," are recorded and saved to your brain's local memory file. For you, the event is logged and complete. However, for that action to become part of the shared, persistent reality, that data must be successfully written to the main simulation server, which updates the state of the key object. A glitch could occur here. Perhaps there was a moment of network packet loss, and the update location command for the keys never reached the server. Or the server was busy with a higher priority process, and your action was dropped from the queue. So, your personal memory says the keys are on the hook, but the server's master file, which represents objective reality, still has the keys located in your hand, and their location is later updated to the refrigerator when you opened it. The conflict you experience is a literal data discrepancy between your local cache and the server's database. This is the real-world equivalent of saving a document on your computer, getting a Save Successful notification, and then finding the old version is still there because of a cloud sync error. The feeling of certainty is genuine because, in your personal data log, the event happened exactly as you remember it. The maddening reality is also genuine because it reflects the authoritative state of the world server. This small, everyday glitch is a powerful clue. It suggests that our memory is not a direct recording of objective reality, but a separate data file that is supposed to be in constant sync with it. And sometimes that sync fails, revealing the seams between our personal experience and the computational fabric of the world itself. If data can be misplaced like this, what about the data that defines people? What happens when we encounter a stranger, but our system gets a signal that we should know them?
Number 18. The paradox of instant recognition. You are in a crowded room, a new city, or a place you've never been, surrounded by strangers. Your eyes scan across the faces, and suddenly you lock onto one person. Your mind goes into a state of high alert. You have never seen this person before, yet every fiber of your being is screaming that you know them. It is not déjà vu, where a scene feels familiar. It is not a simple case of mistaken identity. It is a deep, instantaneous, and paradoxical feeling of intimate recognition for a complete stranger. You may feel an inexplicable pull towards them, or a sudden, groundless sense of distrust. There is a connection, but there is no history to support it. This powerful, spontaneous feeling is difficult to explain through conventional psychology. We might say they resemble someone from our past, but the feeling is often too specific and too profound for that simple explanation. From the perspective of the simulation hypothesis, however, this experience could be a fascinating clue about how consciousness is managed within the system. It could be evidence of reused assets or reinstantiated consciousness IDs. Imagine the simulation has a finite pool of core consciousness programs, the fundamental souls or player IDs that inhabit the avatars we see as people. Over vast cycles of time or across different iterations of the simulation, these core programs are reused. They are wiped of their explicit memories, given a new body, a new personality skin, and reinserted into the simulation.
What you are experiencing in that moment of instant recognition is your core program recognizing another core program from a previous shared experience, a past life, a different simulation loop, or even a pre-simulation staging area. The explicit memory data is gone, but the fundamental energetic signature, the unique ID of that consciousness, is still recognizable to your own. You don't know how you know them, but your system recognizes their system. It's like wiping a hard drive and reinstalling a new operating system, but a deep-level recovery scan can still detect fragments of the old file system. Another possibility is that this is a narrative flag, a signal from the simulation's story engine. This person is flagged in the code as being a critical character for your future storyline. The sudden feeling of recognition is a deliberately programmed effect, a quest marker for your intuition, designed to draw your attention to them and ensure an interaction takes place. It's the simulation's way of saying, pay attention, this one is important. Whether it's the echo of a past life or a flag from the game engine, the paradox of instant recognition suggests that our interactions are not as random as they appear. It hints at a hidden layer of information beneath the surface of everyday life, a network of connections and destinies that are written into the very code of the people around us. If some people are flagged as important, it implies that some days and some events are more important than others. This leads us to the strange feeling that some days are not lived, but are simply performed from a script.
Number 19. Why some days feel scripted. Most of our lives are lived in a state of comfortable, predictable chaos. We make plans, but things go wrong. We have routines, but they get interrupted. There's a background hum of randomness to our existence. But then there are those days. Days where events align with such improbable, clockwork precision that it feels like you've woken up on a movie set. It could be a day of perfect serendipity, where every traffic light turns green, you run into the exact person you needed to talk to, a chance opportunity falls into your lap, and everything flows towards a perfect conclusion. Conversely, it could be a day of relentless, comical tragedy, where a series of unlikely mishaps cascade one after another, as if orchestrated by a mischievous god. These are the days that feel scripted. The feeling is so strong because the laws of probability seem to have been temporarily suspended. The chain of coincidences is too long, the narrative arc too clean, to be the product of random chance. The simulation hypothesis suggests that this feeling is entirely accurate. Most of the time, we are operating in the simulation's sandbox mode. We are given a set of rules, a physics engine, and a high degree of free will to interact with the environment and other players. The system is just providing the framework. But on these scripted days, the simulation's narrative engine takes a more active role. These are the main story quest days. The system needs to advance your personal plot to ensure you hit a specific narrative beat required for your character's development. So it begins to intervene. It subtly manipulates probabilities, spawns specific NPC encounters, and triggers environmental events to guide you along a predetermined path. The traffic lights turn green because the system is clearing a path for you to make a crucial appointment. You run into that specific person because the system has deliberately placed them in your path at that exact moment. That feeling of being in the flow is you being carried along by the current of the narrative script. The opposite is also true. A day of scripted tragedy might be the system's way of introducing a necessary conflict, a challenge designed to force growth or a change in direction.
It's the inciting incident of the next chapter in your story, delivered with all the subtlety of a cinematic montage. This perspective means that our sense of free will might be a fluctuating variable. On sandbox days, our freedom is high. On scripted days, we are actors performing our roles, hitting our marks in a play written by an unseen director. The uncanny feeling of a day being too perfect or too crazy to be true is our consciousness recognizing the shift from player-driven gameplay to a non-interactive cutscene that we are living through. This idea of the system managing our experience brings us to the final clue in this section. If the simulation can manipulate events to move its story forward, perhaps it also manipulates our very perception of time to manage its own resources.
Number 20. Time dilation without physics. We have discussed how time seems to stretch in moments of physical crisis, but there is a much more common and profound form of time distortion that almost every adult experiences. It is the paradox that as you get older, the years seem to get shorter. A summer vacation in your childhood felt like an eternity, a vast open landscape of time. A year in your 40s or 50s can feel like it passes in the blink of an eye. The days can feel long and arduous, but the weeks, months, and years seem to accelerate, slipping through your fingers at an ever-increasing rate. Our standard explanation for this is psychological. When we are young, every experience is new. Our brains are forming new neural pathways, recording vast amounts of fresh data. This high rate of data acquisition makes time feel dense and slow. As we age, we fall into routines. The experiences are no longer new. The brain doesn't need to record as much data, so our perception of time speeds up. It is a compelling theory, but the simulation hypothesis offers a different, more technical layer to this explanation. It frames this phenomenon as a fundamental feature of the system's resource management, computational file compression. Imagine your life is a video file being recorded by the simulation. In your childhood, the system is recording in ultra-high definition, 4K resolution. Every moment is novel and information-rich, so the system allocates a massive amount of processing power and memory to capture it all. The resulting file size for 1 year of your childhood is enormous. As you settle into the routines of adult life, the system recognizes the informational redundancy. You are largely repeating the same actions and thoughts each day. To save processing power and data storage, the system begins to compress your experience. It switches from 4K recording to a highly compressed lower-resolution format. It doesn't need to render and save every single boring commute in full detail. It can just log it as commute_routine_734. The system is essentially using a lossy compression algorithm on your life. For you, the user, the subjective experience of this temporal compression is that time feels like it's speeding up. Fewer unique frames of experience are being rendered and saved per year, so the years fly by. The days feel long because on that micro level, you are still living in high resolution, but the macro level summary of your life is being aggressively compressed. This is an incredibly efficient way to run a simulation with billions of conscious agents over long lifespans. You allocate the most resources to the periods of highest growth and learning, and you conserve resources during periods of stasis and repetition. Your personal feeling of accelerating time is not just a quirk of psychology. It is a direct reflection of the simulation's changing data management strategy for your life file. We have now journeyed through the data leaks in memory and time, finding clues in the very software of our minds. But the code of our reality may be written even deeper than that. It may not just be in our thoughts, but in our very flesh and blood.
We will now move from the software of the mind to the hardware of the body to explore the code that runs in our own biology.
Number 21. DNA as a programmable language. We have explored the strange data glitches in our minds and memories, suggesting we are interacting with a system. But now we must go deeper. We must look past the user experience and into the core programming of our very existence. The clue is not in the sky or in our thoughts, but coiled tightly inside every cell of our bodies. This clue is DNA, and it is a discovery so profound that we are still grappling with its implications. For decades, we have thought of DNA as a blueprint, a passive chemical diagram for building a living thing. But this metaphor is tragically outdated. DNA is not a blueprint. It is a program. It is a fully functional, digital programming language of staggering complexity and elegance. It is code. Think about how a computer program works. A software engineer writes lines of code using a specific language, like Python or C++. This code is then read or executed by the computer's processor to perform a function, whether it's displaying a web page or running a video game. The biological machinery in our cells does exactly the same thing. The DNA strand is the hard drive, containing billions of lines of code. A gene is a specific application, a subroutine. The cell's machinery, like the ribosome, acts as the processor. It moves along the DNA strand, reads a specific gene, and executes its instructions. The output of that program is not something on a screen. It's a protein, a real functional piece of molecular machinery that goes on to perform a specific job in your body. The sheer amount of information is breathtaking. A single human cell contains about 3 gigabytes of genetic data. Your body is not just a collection of flesh and bone. It is a biological computer network of trillions of processors, all running programs from the same central hard drive, all at the same time. The question then becomes impossibly stark. Why would blind, random, natural evolution produce a system of information storage and execution that so perfectly mirrors the digital technology that we ourselves invented? It seems like an impossible coincidence. The simulation hypothesis suggests it's not a coincidence at all. It is a sign of intelligent design. If you were to create a simulated universe populated with biological life, you would need a way to store the immense amount of information required to build and operate those life forms. You would inevitably choose the most efficient, stable, and versatile method possible, a digital code. Nature didn't stumble upon this system. This system is the fundamental architecture for creating life within the simulation. The final, irrefutable proof is that we have learned to hack it. Scientists like Craig Venter have proven that we can write our own DNA code on a computer, print it out, and insert it into a cell, creating the world's first synthetic life form. We are not just reading the code anymore. We are writing our own programs in the language of life. And if DNA is a language, that begs the next question. What is the alphabet it's written in? The answer is a clue of even greater simplicity and strangeness. Number 22. The 4-letter code that runs you. If our DNA is a programming language, then it must have an alphabet. When we look at the fundamental characters that write the epic story of life, we do not find a complex array of elegant symbols. We find something so brutally simple, it's almost unbelievable. The entire, breathtaking diversity of life on Earth, From the smallest bacterium to the largest blue whale, from the fungus growing in the forest floor to the human brain capable of contemplating its own existence, is written with just 4 letters: A, C, G, and T. These letters represent 4 molecules: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. That's it. 4 characters are all it takes to write you. In the world of computing, the most fundamental language is binary, a system of just 2 characters, 0 and 1. From these 2 simple digits, all the complexity of the digital world is born. Our biological code is not binary, but quaternary. It is a 4-character digital system. It uses discrete, separate units of information, not a smooth analog spectrum. This digital nature is a profound clue. But the structure of the language is even more telling. These 4 letters are arranged into 3-letter words called codons. A sequence like ACG is an instruction that tells the cell's machinery to grab a specific amino acid, which is a building block for a protein. CGG means grab another one. It is a direct instruction set, just like the assembly language that operates at the lowest levels of a computer processor. A gene is simply a long sentence made of these 3-letter words, a complete program that tells the cell precisely which building blocks to grab, in what order, to build a complex machine. Perhaps the most compelling evidence for a simulated design is the universality of this code. The same 4 letters, and for the most part, the same 3-letter words, mean the exact same thing in virtually every living organism on Earth. The gene that codes for a specific protein in a fly can be inserted into a mouse, and the mouse's cells will read it and build the same protein. It's as if every make and model of computer in the world, developed independently on different continents over millions of years, all just happened to run on the exact same proprietary operating system, from Windows to Mac OS to Linux. It's a statistical impossibility from a random standpoint. The simulation hypothesis provides a single, elegant solution. This is not a coincidence, it's a standard. The creators of the simulation designed one universal and highly efficient biological operating system. They wrote one instruction set, and they used it to generate all forms of life. All life on Earth shares a common code because all life was generated from a common developer's platform. The 4 letters of DNA are not a product of random chance. They are the foundational command keys of the simulation's biological engine. But if this code is so efficient and so elegant, it leads to a paradox that baffled scientists for decades. When we looked at the full 3 billion letters of the human genome, we found that most of it wasn't doing anything at all.
Number 23. Why most of your DNA is unused. We have established that our bodies are run by an elegant 4-letter digital code. But when scientists first sequenced the entire human genome, they were confronted with a paradox that seemed to undermine the very idea of an efficient design. They discovered that only about 2% of our DNA is made up of genes, the code that actively builds proteins. The other 98% appeared to be meaningless, a vast and silent ocean of nonsense code. For decades, this was famously dismissed as junk DNA. It was seen as the useless clutter of our evolutionary past: broken genes, ancient viral infections, and random sequences that were no longer needed but hadn't been deleted. From a design perspective, this seemed incredibly sloppy. Why would an intelligent system, or even an efficient natural process, carry around a hard drive that is 98% full of junk files? It seemed to argue against the idea of a clean, programmed reality. But now, we are beginning to realize this wasn't junk at all. We were simply users looking at the source code, not understanding what we were seeing. The simulation hypothesis offers a perfect analogy. This non-coding DNA is the simulation's operating system and its developer comments. In any complex piece of software, the active code is just a small part of the whole. The rest consists of commented out code, which are lines that the program ignores but are left in for developers to read. It contains notes, instructions, and old versions of functions that might be needed later. Our junk DNA could be exactly this. It could contain the legacy code of our evolution, the genes for traits our ancestors had, now switched off but kept in the archive. It could be code for future content, like a video game containing files for a downloadable content expansion pack that hasn't been released yet. These are potential evolutionary paths, abilities lying dormant, waiting for a system patch to activate them. More importantly, we are now discovering that this junk DNA is actually the master regulator. It is the operating system itself. These vast non-coding regions produce molecules that don't build the house, but they act as the foreman, telling the builders which rooms to build, when to build them, and how big they should be. It controls the expression of the active genes with breathtaking complexity. It's the difference between a simple text file and a full operating system like Windows. One just holds data, the other manages the entire system. From this perspective, our DNA is not inefficient at all. It is a masterpiece of layered design. The 2% is the application software for our biology. The 98% is the sophisticated OS, the developer's kit, and the complete version history of our avatar, all packed into one place. It might even contain the ultimate Easter egg, a signature or a message from the creators, hidden deep within the non-coding sequences where it would never interfere with the program. If our DNA operates like code, what about the process that writes it? What if evolution itself is a programming technique?
Number 24. The simulation signature in genetic algorithms. For over a century, the driving force of life has been understood as Darwinian evolution, a process of random mutation and natural selection. It paints a picture of a blind, stumbling, and often brutal process. Life tries things at random, and whatever happens to survive, survives. It is a world governed by chance and necessity. But what if this picture is wrong? What if evolution is not random at all? What if it is a highly sophisticated problem-solving algorithm, one that we ourselves have independently discovered and now use in our most advanced computing? This is the clue hidden in a field of computer science known as genetic algorithms. A genetic algorithm is a brilliant method for finding the optimal solution to a very complex problem. Imagine you need to design the most efficient airplane wing. Instead of trying to calculate it from scratch, you would start by generating 100 random wing designs on a computer. You would then test all of them in a simulated wind tunnel to see how well they perform. This is the fitness test. You then take the top 10% of the best-performing wings and have them reproduce. You take design elements from one wing and cross them over with elements from another. You also introduce a few tiny random changes or mutations.
You then take this new generation of wings and run the whole process again. After thousands of these generations, the algorithm will converge on a wing design that is more efficient and ingenious than any human could have designed from scratch. Now, think about how life on Earth works. A population of creatures exist. They have variations based on their genes. They are tested for fitness by their environment. The ones that survive are the ones that get to reproduce, mixing their genes through sexual reproduction and introducing small random mutations. This is not just similar to a genetic algorithm. It is a genetic algorithm running on a planetary scale for billions of years. The fact that we invented this method to solve computational problems only to realize that nature had been using the exact same architecture all along is an astronomical coincidence. The simulation hypothesis argues it is not a coincidence. The process of evolution is a genetic algorithm because our universe is a computational system. This is the subroutine the simulation runs to auto-populate the world with diverse and highly optimized biological assets. It is an intelligent, efficient process for generating complexity without needing to manually design every single bacterium, plant, and animal. The fitness landscape that biologists talk about isn't a metaphor. It is a literal set of parameters and variables in the simulation's code, defining the rules for that particular environmental zone. Our existence is not the result of a series of lucky accidents. It is the output of a sophisticated, iterative optimization program. We are the solution that the algorithm found to the problem of life on Earth. This tells us how the code for the body is written. But once the body is built, does information stay neatly locked inside the DNA, or can it be stored in more mysterious ways, in places that defy our understanding of biology?
Number 25. Cellular memory in organ transplants. We are taught that memory, personality, and identity reside within the intricate neural wiring of the brain. The brain is the hard drive, the seat of consciousness, and the rest of the body is merely the mechanical chassis that it controls. But a collection of strange, unsettling, and persistent anecdotal reports from the world of organ transplantation challenges this fundamental assumption. These stories hint that memory is not centralized, but distributed, that information is stored not just in the brain, but in our very cells. This is the controversial concept of cellular memory. We must be clear, this idea is not accepted by mainstream science. But the stories are so numerous and so specific that they demand our attention. Consider the widely reported case of a young girl who received the heart of another child who was murdered. After the surgery, she began having terrifying, recurring nightmares about the murder, dreams so vivid and detailed that they eventually led the police to identify and convict the killer. There are stories of people who receive a new heart and suddenly develop a passionate craving for a specific food they always hated, a food that, it turns out, was their donor's absolute favorite. A man who was a construction worker with no interest in the arts receives a heart transplant and is suddenly overcome with an inexplicable talent for and love of classical music, a passion that had defined his donor's life. The conventional explanation for these cases is a combination of factors: postoperative trauma, the side effects of immunosuppressant drugs, and the power of suggestion, where a recipient learns about their donor and subconsciously adopts their traits. These are rational and plausible explanations, but they don't always capture the raw, spontaneous, and deeply alien feeling of these new desires and memories. The simulation hypothesis offers a different framework, one where cellular memory is not only possible, but logical.
If your body is a biological machine and your consciousness is the data and programming that runs it, it's inefficient to assume all data is stored exclusively in the brain. In modern computer networks, we use distributed data and local caching to improve performance. Perhaps our bodies work the same way. Perhaps every major organ, especially electrically active ones like the heart, has a local data cache. This cache could store strong emotional imprints, deep-seated preferences, and traumatic event data. When an organ is transplanted, you are not just getting a new biological part. You are getting a piece of used hardware that still has data fragments in its local memory. The recipient system, in its effort to integrate this new component, can sometimes access these ghost files. The new cravings, talents, and nightmares are the user experiencing the donor's leftover data. It is a biological data transfer, a glitch in the hardware swap. This notion of ghost data is profoundly strange when considering a physical organ, but it takes us to an even more mysterious place. What happens when the physical part is not just swapped, but is gone entirely, yet the data signal for it remains?
Number 26. Phantom limb sensations and ghost data. The concept of cellular memory suggests that data can be stored in our physical organs. But what happens when the organ, the hardware itself, is gone entirely, yet its data signal persists? This question takes us to one of the most haunting and well-documented medical mysteries, the phenomenon of the phantom limb. An amputee, someone who has lost an arm or a leg, will often continue to feel that limb with vivid, undeniable reality. They can feel an itch on a wrist that no longer exists. They can feel their missing fingers clenching into a fist. Most tragically, they can experience excruciating pain in a part of their body that has been surgically removed and is now nothing but empty space. The standard neurological explanation is that the brain's body map, the internal schematic of the body, has not yet updated. The neurons that were connected to the lost limb are still active, and they misfire, creating these phantom sensations. The brain, in its confusion, continues to generate the feeling of a limb because its own internal wiring still shows it should be there. This is a powerful and logical explanation, but from a simulation perspective, it describes something even more profound. It describes a desynchronization error between the physical avatar and its underlying character model in the simulation's code. Imagine you are a character in a hyper-realistic virtual reality game. Your character model, the data file that defines your virtual body, has 4 limbs. Now, imagine your physical avatar in the game suffers damage and loses an arm. The physical render of your character is updated to show the missing arm. However, the core character file, the fundamental data structure that tells the system what your avatar is, might not be fully updated. In the code, your avatar still has 4 limbs. The system, in its regular diagnostic checks, continues to send data packets and pull for a status report from the arm hardware. It sends a signal, report status of hand, but the physical hardware is gone. It receives an error message, a 404 not found from the body. This data conflict, this constant error signal between the software and the missing hardware, is what you experience as phantom limb pain. The itch you can't scratch is a low-level data ping. The agonizing pain is a critical system error, a recurring crash report from a disconnected peripheral. This means your sense of your body is not just generated by your brain, it is defined by a persistent data field in the simulation. The phantom limb is a ghost in the machine, a literal data ghost of a piece of code that has not been properly deleted. It shows that we are more than our physical parts. We are a collection of information a data construct, and sometimes we can feel the parts of our code that no longer have a physical expression. If the body's code can produce such vivid error messages when something is broken, what about its ability to fix those errors? Can the code itself run a repair script?
Number 27. The body's ability to autocorrect errors. Our existence is fragile. We are soft-bodied creatures in a world full of sharp edges. Yet, we possess a power so common we barely notice it, a power that could be seen as one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for a simulated design. This is the power of healing. It is the body's phenomenal ability to autocorrect its own errors. Think about what happens when you get a simple paper cut. The integrity of your physical avatar has been breached. The code has been damaged. Instantly, a complex cascade of automated subroutines is triggered. Cells begin to communicate, resources are mobilized, and a process of perfect reconstruction begins. A scab forms, a biological patch to protect the system while repairs are underway. Beneath it, the system reads the original, undamaged DNA blueprint and begins to rebuild the damaged tissue cell by cell until the physical form once again matches the source code. When you break a bone, the process is even more remarkable. The body doesn't just glue the two pieces back together. It runs a sophisticated script that often rebuilds the bone stronger than it was before, a process known as overcompensation. This is not just a biological process. It is a hallmark of an advanced, robust error-correcting system. In data science, error-correcting codes are used to ensure the integrity of information sent across noisy channels. These codes add redundant data to a message, so that if a part of the message is corrupted during transmission, the receiver can use the redundant data to perfectly reconstruct the original. Our bodies appear to be running a physical version of this exact principle. The DNA in every cell is the master file, the original uncorrupted message. The body itself is the transmitted signal, constantly facing potential corruption from the environment. The process of healing is our biological error correction code in action, constantly referencing the master file to fix any damage. This suggests the body is not just a passive machine that breaks and decays. It is an active, intelligent system designed for data integrity and self-preservation. It is a simulation asset designed to be robust. From this viewpoint, a scar is not a flaw. It is the visible remnant of a successfully applied software patch. The pain you feel from an injury is a system alert, a warning message telling you that a critical data error has occurred and needs attention. The feeling of relief as you heal is the feedback you get as the repair scripts run successfully and the system returns to its optimal state. The very fact that our bodies are programmed with such powerful, automated self-repair scripts points to a design that prioritizes stability and continuity. But this raises a profound question. If the system is so good at repairing the hardware, how much of that hardware is truly essential for the most important program to run? The program of consciousness itself. Number 28. Why consciousness doesn't need a full brain. We have always assumed that consciousness, our sense of self, our very soul, is a product of the brain. The brain is the supercomputer, and our thoughts are the software it runs. The more complex the thought, the more brain power you need. It is a direct relationship. Less hardware means less processing power. This is why a specific set of medical cases are so deeply disturbing to our understanding of who we are. These are cases of people with a condition called hydrocephalus, where the cranial cavity fills with cerebrospinal fluid, crushing and restricting the brain. In some extreme and rare cases, individuals have been discovered through brain scans to be missing 50, 75, or even up to 95% of their brain tissue. They are left with only a thin sheet of neurons pressed against the inside of their skull. According to our hardware model, these people should be profoundly disabled if they are conscious at all. Yet, many of them live remarkably normal lives. They have jobs, families, and are socially functional. Their IQ can be normal or even above average. This is an earth-shattering paradox. If you remove 95% of your computer's CPU, you don't get a computer that runs a little slower. You get a dead piece of metal. So how can a person function with almost no physical brain? The simulation hypothesis offers a radical and elegant solution. The physical brain is not the computer. The brain is the interface. It is the biological modem, the intricate terminal that connects your core consciousness, your actual program, to the physical avatar of your body. The immense computational processing required for conscious experience is not happening locally inside your skull. It is running on the simulation's main server, the central processor that runs the entire universe. Your consciousness is being streamed to your body, much like a modern cloud gaming service streams a complex video game to your phone. Your phone isn't powerful enough to run the game, but it doesn't have to be. It only needs to be powerful enough to receive the data stream and send your commands back to the server. The brain is the same. As long as the interface, the biological modem, remains functional enough to maintain a stable connection to the server, the full program of your consciousness can run. The brain's incredible neuroplasticity, its ability to reroute functions, is the interface reallocating its limited hardware to maintain this crucial connection. This explains how someone with only 5% of a brain can still be fully them. Their consciousness program is 100% intact, running on the server. They are just accessing it through a severely compromised, but still functional end-user device. This idea is perhaps the ultimate clue about our nature. We are not our bodies. We are not even our brains. We are the signal, not the receiver. And if the system is designed to keep this signal running, even through catastrophic hardware failure, what happens when it goes a step further? What happens when the system decides to not just manage a bug, but to eliminate it entirely?
Number 29. Spontaneous healing and runtime fixes. The body's ability to heal is remarkable, but it has limits. It follows a predictable set of biological rules. And then there are the cases that defy all rules, the events that medical science can only label as miracles. This is the phenomenon of spontaneous remission. A patient is diagnosed with a terminal, late-stage cancer. The tumors are aggressive and widespread. Doctors give them months or even weeks to live. They are sent home with palliative care. Then, months later, they return for a follow-up scan, and the doctors are left in a state of stunned disbelief. The cancer is gone, not just reduced, but completely vanished, with no trace it was ever there. This is not the result of a new treatment or a diet change. It happens without any medical intervention whatsoever. It is a biological event that is as rare as being struck by lightning, and we have no scientific explanation for it. It is a black box event. A problem went in, and a miracle came out, with no understanding of the process in between. From the perspective of the simulation hypothesis, this is not a miracle. It is a direct, manual intervention by a system administrator. It is a runtime fix.
Imagine your body's avatar has encountered a critical, fatal error in its code, the cancer. In most cases, the simulation's rule set dictates that this error will run its course, leading to the deletion of the avatar. This is the normal process of life and death within the program. However, in extremely rare instances, a developer with administrative privileges might choose to intervene. This could be for any number of reasons. Perhaps your consciousness unit is part of a specific study and needs to be kept online. Perhaps your narrative arc is not meant to end this way. Or perhaps it's the result of an automated high-level maintenance script designed to fix catastrophic errors in valuable assets. This developer would access the live code of the simulation, locate the corrupted cancer code in your personal data file, and manually delete it. They would then restore the affected cell's programming to a backup copy of your original healthy DNA code. For the user, the experience would be miraculous. The disease would simply vanish. For the developer, it was a simple act of debugging, finding a bug in the live production server and applying a direct patch before it could crash the program. This explains the extreme rarity of these events. They are not part of the standard rules of biology. They are an external override of those rules. They are a glimpse of a hand reaching into the code of our reality and changing it in real time. These direct interventions show the power the system has. But for the vast majority of us, we are subject to the standard, unpatched rules of the program. And these rules seem to include some very specific and very final limitations.
Number 30. Biological limits that act like software caps. We have seen the body's incredible ability to self-repair and even the potential for direct intervention from a system administrator. This might make us feel limitless, but our daily experience tells us the opposite is true. Our biology is a story of frustrating and seemingly arbitrary limits. Why can a human cell only divide about 50 times before it simply stops? A phenomenon known as the Hayflick limit. Why can we only hear a narrow range of frequencies, while dogs and bats can hear sounds far beyond our capacity? Why can we only see a tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum, the visible light, while the universe is teeming with infrared and ultraviolet information? And most profoundly, why do we age? Why do our bodies inevitably decay, leading to a finite lifespan? From a purely biological standpoint, these are complex results of evolutionary trade-offs. But from a simulation perspective, they are not limitations, they are features. They are deliberately programmed software caps, designed to regulate the user experience and manage the simulation's resources. The Hayflick limit is not a bug, it is a feature of planned obsolescence. It's a kill switch written into our cellular code to ensure that each avatar has a finite lifespan. This prevents overpopulation, ensures generational turnover, and keeps the simulation's narrative dynamic. Our limited sensory range is a form of data filtering. Why waste precious processing power rendering the entire electromagnetic spectrum for a user who only needs a tiny fraction of it to navigate their environment and fulfill their purpose? The simulation only streams us the bandwidth of reality that is relevant to our gameplay. We can't see in infrared, not because our eyes are incapable, but because we do not have the infrared-enabled graphics card as part of our avatar's standard hardware package. The process of aging itself is the most powerful cap of all. It can be seen as a systemic degradation script that slowly and deliberately reduces the performance stats of our avatar over time. Our strength, speed, and memory are gradually nerfed.
This ensures that the gameplay loop for each conscious unit comes to a natural conclusion, making way for new players to enter the simulation. These limits feel entirely natural to us because they define the very boundaries of our existence. But from a computational viewpoint, they look like the artificial constraints of a well-managed, long-term multiplayer game. They are the terms and conditions of the user license for our life. We have now seen how our very biology, from its code to its limits, mirrors a computational system. This concludes our journey through the anomalies of the flesh. We now turn our gaze outward again, from the code within us to the code that runs the universe itself. We will explore how the fundamental laws of physics behave less like nature and more like the processing limits of a cosmic computer.
Number 31. Planck units and the pixel size of reality. We begin our journey into the physics of the cosmos by returning to a clue we touched upon at the very beginning, but its importance is so profound that we must now examine it with a new, more technical lens. This is the concept of Planck units, and it is here that we find the clearest evidence for a digitized, pixelated reality. In the late 19th century, the physicist Max Planck was working on a problem so fundamental it was shaking the foundations of science. In his calculations, he discovered a set of universal constants: the speed of light, the gravitational constant, and his own Planck constant. He realized he could combine these constants in specific ways to derive a set of natural units for length, time, mass, and energy. These were not arbitrary human measurements like meters or seconds. They were units seemingly baked into the fabric of the universe itself. The most famous of these is the Planck length, which we've discussed as the pixel of space. It is the shortest possible length that has any meaning. Below this, our theories predict that space itself dissolves into a quantum foam, where the concepts of here and there break down. But there is also a Planck time. This is the time it takes for a photon, a particle of light, to travel one Planck length. It is the shortest possible instant of time, approximately 10 to the power of negative 44 seconds. It is the frame rate of the universe. Just as a movie is a series of still frames shown in rapid succession to create the illusion of smooth motion, our reality might be a sequence of these Planck time frames, updating at a rate so fast it is utterly imperceptible to us. Why would a natural, analog universe have a discrete pixel size and a finite frame rate? An uncreated universe should be infinitely smooth and continuous. But a computed universe must have these limitations. They are the fundamental architectural constraints of any processor. A computer represents space as a grid of discrete points, and time as a series of discrete ticks of its internal clock. It cannot handle the concept of true infinity. Planck units look exactly like the base resolution and clock speed of a cosmic computer's processor. Our entire universe, with all of its perceived smoothness and continuity, is a high-fidelity rendering running on a grid with a specific resolution and updating at a specific frame rate. This is not just a philosophical argument. Some physicists have proposed that this pixelated nature of spacetime might one day be detectable. They predict that high-energy photons traveling from distant cosmic events might arrive at our telescopes at slightly different times depending on their energy. A tiny discrepancy caused by them interacting with the discrete grid of spacetime. If this graininess of reality is ever measured, it would be the single greatest scientific discovery in human history, shifting the simulation hypothesis from a fascinating idea into a testable theory. It would mean the universe
is not a place, it is a piece of hardware. And like any hardware, it must have a processing speed limit.
Number 32. The speed of light as a processing limit. In our universe, there is one law that is absolute, one speed limit that nothing with mass can ever break. It is the speed of light, denoted by the letter c. It is approximately 299,792 kilometers per second, and it is woven into the very fabric of space-time. Einstein's theory of relativity shows us that as an object approaches the speed of light, strange things happen. Its mass increases, time slows down for it, and its length contracts. To actually reach the speed of light would require an infinite amount of energy. But the question we so rarely ask is, why? Why is there a cosmic speed limit at all? In a natural, infinite universe, why should there be this arbitrary, unbreakable barrier? The simulation hypothesis offers a stunningly simple and logical answer. The speed of light is not a speed limit for objects, it is the processing speed of the simulation itself. In any computer system, information travels at a finite speed, limited by the processor's clock cycle and the physical properties of its architecture. There is a maximum speed at which the system can update the state of any given point in its simulated environment. The speed of light, c, could be precisely that, the speed at which information propagates across the universal grid. It is the refresh rate of reality. When an object moves through the simulation, what's actually happening is that the system is updating its properties, its position, its momentum, from one point on the grid to the next, frame by frame. The speed of light, c, could be precisely that, the speed at which information propagates across the universal grid. It is the refresh rate of reality. When an object moves through the simulation, what's actually happening is that the system is updating its properties, its position, its momentum, from one point on the grid to the next, frame by frame. The speed of light is the maximum number of grid points per unit of time that any object's data can be transferred. This explains the strange effects of relativity. An object's mass increasing as it approaches c is the system having to dedicate more and more processing power to calculate its increasingly complex state. It's the computational equivalent of drag. Time slowing down for the object is a direct consequence of this. Because the system is using so many processing cycles to move the object, it has fewer cycles left over to process the object's internal clock, its own experience of time. The program is lagging for that specific object. The reason reaching c requires infinite energy is because it would require the system to dedicate infinite processing power to a single object, which would crash the entire simulation. From this perspective, the speed of light is not a mysterious cosmic law. It is the ultimate benchmark of the universe's hardware. It's the CPU speed of our reality. Every time we measure c, we are measuring the processing power of the great computer that may be running our world. This idea is supported by the fact that c appears in the most famous equation of all time, E equals mc squared, which tells us that matter and energy are two sides of the same coin. In a simulation, this makes perfect sense. Matter is a stable, localized pattern of information. Energy is that information in a state of transfer. They are both just data. And this data, these fundamental constants, sometimes align in ways that seem too perfect to be random. Number 33. Mathematical constants that shouldn't align. The universe is governed by a set of fundamental constants, numbers that appear to be finely tuned to the exact values needed for life and complexity to exist. We have c, the speed of light, which we framed as the processing speed. We have g, the gravitational constant, which determines the strength of gravity. And we have Planck's constant, h, which governs the bizarre world of quantum mechanics. These are the core variables in the simulation's source code. But sometimes these seemingly unrelated numbers combine in ways that produce results so simple and so elegant that it feels like a deliberate design choice, a hint left by the programmer. One of the most striking examples is a mysterious number known as the fine structure constant, or alpha. Alpha is a dimensionless constant, meaning it is a pure number, about 1 over 137, that doesn't depend on the units we use to measure it. It governs the strength of the electromagnetic force, which determines how atoms hold together and how light interacts with matter. It is arguably the most important number in all of chemistry and physics. The strange part is how alpha is calculated. It is derived from a simple combination of three of the most fundamental and seemingly disconnected constants of reality: the speed of light, the charge of a single electron, and Planck's constant. Why should these three pillars of our universe, the speed of the cosmos, the fundamental unit of electricity, and the fundamental unit of quantum action, combine in such a way as to produce a simple, pure number like 1 over 137? Physicist Richard Feynman called it one of the greatest damn mysteries of physics, a magic number that comes to us with no understanding by man. From a simulation standpoint, this magic is the elegance of well-written code. A good programmer doesn't have random, disconnected variables all over their code. They create a system where the core variables are interrelated in simple, elegant ways. The fine structure constant could be a prime example of this. It could be a master variable that the system's architects set, from which other constants like the speed of light are derived, or vice versa. It is a sign of a unified, coherent design, not a jumble of random, accidental values. Another mystery lies in the value of pi. We know pi from geometry as the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. But bafflingly, this number pops up everywhere in physics, in equations that have nothing to do with circles, like those governing waves and probability distributions. Why is the geometry of a simple circle so deeply embedded in the most fundamental laws of the cosmos? It's as if the programmer had a favorite subroutine, the circle function, and used it all over the source code to solve different problems. These alignments and recurrences are clues. They suggest the constants of our universe are not a random assortment of numbers, but the interdependent parameters of a single underlying piece of software. And if it's software, it must have a way to handle errors.
Number 34. Error-correcting codes in particle physics. In our modern digital world, data is everything. And a primary concern is how to protect that data from corruption. When we send a message from one computer to another, or store information on a hard drive, there's always a risk that a small part of that information could be flipped. A 0 becomes a 1, or a 1 becomes a 0. To combat this, computer scientists developed something brilliant called error-correcting codes. The basic idea is to add redundancy to the information. Instead of just sending a 1, you might send 111. If one of those bits gets flipped during transmission and the receiver gets 101, it can look at the pattern, see that the majority of the bits are 1, and confidently assume that the intended message was 1. It can autocorrect the error. This principle of redundant, self-correcting information is the bedrock of our digital infrastructure. In a completely separate field, with no knowledge of this technology, theoretical physicists were trying to understand the fundamental nature of reality. One of the leading modern theories is called supersymmetry. In its essence, supersymmetry proposes that for every fundamental particle we know, like an electron or a quark, there exists a much heavier, unseen superpartner particle. This theory elegantly solves many deep problems in physics, but it essentially doubles the number of fundamental particles in the universe. It creates a system of profound redundancy. Recently, a physicist named James Gates made a mind-bending discovery. While working on the complex equations that describe supersymmetristic systems, he found something utterly unexpected embedded deep within the mathematics. He found a specific, well-known type of computer code. It was a block-based, doubly even, self-dual, linear error-correcting code. It was the exact kind of code you would use to ensure the integrity of data in a computer system. To be clear, this is not a metaphor. He found literal error-correcting code in the theoretical equations that describe the fundamental particles of our universe. Why would the laws of physics, the rules that govern the very fabric of reality at a subatomic level, be running on the same error correction software that we use to send emails and browse the web? The simulation hypothesis provides a stunningly direct answer. The universe needs to protect the integrity of its own information. The fundamental particles are not just things, they are bits of data in the simulation. The laws of physics are the code that governs them. And that code includes a self-repair function, a set of redundancy rules to ensure that the simulation doesn't corrupt over time. Professor Gates himself said, "I have been led to the inescapable conclusion that I cannot build a consistent theory of physics that does not have, embedded in it, a description of a computer code. The universe is not just like a computer, it may be one. And if it's a computer, it must have a way of handling and storing massive amounts of data. This leads us to one of the most mysterious objects in the cosmos, the black hole."
Number 35. Black holes and data compression. Black holes are the monsters of the cosmos. They are points of such immense gravity that nothing, not even light, can escape their grasp. The common image is of a cosmic vacuum cleaner sucking in matter and destroying it forever. But modern physics, guided by the holographic principle, is painting a very different and far stranger picture. The holographic principle is a groundbreaking idea that suggests all the information contained within a volume of space, every atom, every particle, every bit of data, can be fully described by the information encoded on its two-dimensional surface boundary. It's as if the 3D reality inside the room you are in could be perfectly represented by a 2D hologram projected on its walls. The black hole is the ultimate test of this principle. When an object falls into a black hole, its three-dimensional information is not destroyed. Instead, it is thought to be imprinted or encoded onto the 2D surface of the black hole's event horizon, the point of no return. The amount of information that can be stored on this surface is colossal, but it is finite. The maximum amount of information that can fit into a given region of space is limited by the surface area of a black hole of that size. This is a profound revelation. It means that information is not just something in the universe,
It is fundamental to it. But from a simulation perspective, this process looks uncannily like something we are very familiar with: data compression. Imagine a black hole is the simulation's recycling bin or its data compression utility. When a part of the simulation, a star, a planet, is no longer needed, the system doesn't just delete it. It runs a compression algorithm on it. The black hole takes the massive, complex, three-dimensional object and converts it into a highly compressed, two-dimensional string of data, efficiently stored on the surface of the event horizon, the point of no return. The amount of information that can be stored on this surface is colossal, but it is finite. The maximum amount of information that can fit into a given region of space is limited by the surface area of a black hole of that size. This is a profound revelation. It means that information is not just something in the universe, it is fundamental to it. But from a simulation perspective, this process looks uncannily like something we are very familiar with: data compression. Imagine a black hole is the simulation's recycling bin or its data compression utility. When a part of the simulation, a star, a planet, is no longer needed, the system doesn't just delete it. It runs a compression algorithm on it. The black hole takes the massive, complex three-dimensional object and converts it into a highly compressed, two-dimensional string of data, efficiently stored on the surface of the event horizon. It's the ultimate zip file. This would explain the seemingly paradoxical nature of black holes. They appear to be objects of pure destruction, but they are also objects of perfect information preservation. They are the ultimate hard drives of the cosmos, capable of storing data at the highest possible density allowed by the laws of physics, or the laws of the simulation. This theory also solves a major problem. If the simulation is running for billions of years, the amount of data would become unmanageable. Black holes provide the perfect solution: a built-in mechanism for archiving old data and compressing unused assets, freeing up processing power for the active parts of the universe. They are a core part of the simulation's long-term data management strategy. If black holes are data compressors and physics is a set of processing limits, it all points to a universe made of information. But there is one final piece of evidence from quantum mechanics that is so strange, it seems to suggest that this information doesn't even exist until a conscious mind decides to look at it.
Number 36. The observer effect in quantum mechanics. Of all the strange and bewildering discoveries to come out of quantum physics, none is more famous, more profound, or more destructive to our classical sense of reality than the observer effect. It is a phenomenon so bizarre that it seems to tear up the rulebook of cause and effect, suggesting that the very act of looking at the universe fundamentally changes what the universe is. In its simplest form, the experiment is this. If you take a subatomic particle, like an electron, and you do not observe it, it behaves like a wave of pure potential. It doesn't have a specific location. It exists in a superposition, a cloud of all its possible locations at once. It is a ghost, a wave of probability. But the moment you try to measure it, the moment you set up a detector to see where it is, the wave of potential instantly collapses and the electron solidifies into a single, definite point in space. It's as if the particle knew it was being watched and it quickly chose a place to be. The traditional explanation is that any act of measurement inevitably involves an interaction. To see an electron, you have to bounce a photon off it, and that interaction is what disturbs the system and forces it to settle into a single state.
But this explanation has always felt incomplete to many, as it doesn't fully capture the instantaneous and seemingly magical nature of the collapse. The simulation hypothesis, however, provides an explanation that is not just intuitive, but is a core principle of efficient computation. This is the ultimate example of lazy rendering, or on-demand processing. The simulation does not waste computational resources by constantly calculating and rendering the exact position of every single particle in the universe at all times. The data load would be impossible. Instead, it keeps unobserved particles in a computationally cheap state, a simple mathematical wave of probability. It only performs the complex calculation to render a definite particle in a definite location when a conscious observer, a user, requests that data by performing a measurement. Your act of observation is a command. It is the user clicking Open File, forcing the system to collapse the cloud of probabilities and render a single concrete outcome. This means reality is not a static, pre-existing thing that we passively observe. It is a dynamic, interactive system that is being generated for us in real time, based on our actions and intentions. The world is not out there waiting to be discovered. It is in a state of potential, waiting to be rendered. This turns the observer from a passive bystander into the very catalyst of creation. Our consciousness is the trigger that turns the fuzzy quantum world into the solid classical reality we experience. We are not just living in the simulation, we are the reason it bothers to render itself in high detail at all. This relationship between observation and rendering leads us to a fascinating question about our own perceptual hardware. If the world waits for us to look at it before it becomes real, is there a delay in our own perception as we wait for that rendering process to complete?
Number 37. The loading delay in brain perception. We experience the world as a seamless, instantaneous flow of events. We see a glass fall, and we perceive it falling in perfect real time. But a series of landmark experiments in neuroscience, most famously those conducted by Benjamin Libet, revealed a startling truth. Our conscious awareness of the world is constantly lagging behind the world itself. There is a measurable delay. Libet's experiments, in essence, showed that the brain initiates a voluntary action, like the decision to flick your wrist, up to half a second before the person is consciously aware of having made the decision. A readiness potential, a wave of electrical activity, builds in the brain long before you think to yourself, "Okay, I will move now." Your brain acts, and then, a noticeable fraction of a second later, your consciousness is informed of the action it has already taken. This has led to a deep philosophical crisis about free will, but it also reveals a fundamental delay in our perception of reality. The conventional explanation is simply neural processing time. It takes time for sensory data to travel through our nerves, be processed by different regions of the brain, and finally be integrated into the stream of our conscious experience. This is undoubtedly part of the story. But from a simulation perspective, this delay is more than just biological processing. It is network latency. It is the round-trip time between your consciousness and the central server of the simulation. Think of your brain as a user's terminal, a local client connected to a vast online game. An event happens in the game world, on the server. That information is sent as a data packet across the network to your terminal. Your brain, the local hardware, processes this data. Your conscious awareness is the final image appearing on your screen. The half-second delay that Libet observed is the ping. It is the lag between the server and the client.
This model also elegantly explains the decision before awareness paradox. The decision to act is not necessarily made in your conscious mind. It could be a command initiated by a lower-level subroutine in your brain's operating system in response to environmental data, or it could even be a command sent from the main server as part of your character's script. Your conscious experience of making a choice is simply the final notification, the moment your terminal gets the confirmation that the action has been executed by the server. You are not the programmer. You are the user being informed of the program's latest action. This loading delay suggests that our consciousness is not the creator of our actions, but an observer of them. We are living in the very recent past, constantly watching a replay of events that have already transpired on the simulation server. If the system has these built-in delays and processing limitations, it implies a design focused on creating a stable, functional experience. This brings us to the next clue, the mystery of a universe that seems far too stable to be an accident.
Number 38. The unnatural stability of the universe. Our universe appears to be balanced on a razor's edge. When scientists calculate the values of the fundamental constants that govern reality, the strength of gravity, the mass of an electron, the energy density of space, they find that these numbers are exquisitely, improbably fine-tuned to allow for the existence of life. This is known as the fine-tuning problem, and it is one of the most significant and debated puzzles in all of science. If you were to take the strength of gravity and increase it by just a tiny fraction, stars would burn out in less than a year, never giving planets the time to form and cool. If you decreased it slightly, galaxies and stars would never have coalesced in the first place. If you altered the ratio of the electromagnetic force to the strong nuclear force by a minuscule amount, atoms could not form stable bonds, and the entire edifice of chemistry, and therefore biology, would be impossible. The universe would be a sterile, chaotic soup of elementary particles. The odds against a random, unguided Big Bang producing a universe with this perfect balance of values have been compared to a blindfolded person throwing a single dart and hitting a specific microscopic target on the other side of the cosmos. So why is our universe so unnaturally stable? Scientists have proposed two main solutions. The first is the anthropic principle, which states that we shouldn't be surprised. The universe has to be this way, because if it weren't, we wouldn't be here to observe it. It is an unavoidable selection bias. The second is the multiverse theory, which proposes that there are an infinite number of universes, each with its own random set of physical laws. We just happen to live in one of the very rare ones where the numbers came up right for life. The simulation hypothesis offers a third and far more direct answer. The universe is not stable by chance. It is stable by design. The fundamental constants are not the result of a cosmic lottery. They are the carefully chosen parameters, the initial settings for the simulation. Imagine a team of software engineers getting ready to launch a new, massive multiplayer online game. They wouldn't just randomize the game's physics. They would spend months in a beta phase, carefully adjusting and fine-tuning the variables, player speed, damage values, resource distribution, to ensure the game is balanced, stable, and enjoyable. Our universe's fine-tuning is the same thing on a cosmic scale.
The creators of our simulation dialed in the exact values for gravity, electromagnetism, and the other forces to create a system capable of lasting for billions of years and generating maximum complexity, leading to conscious observers like us. The stability of our universe is not a mystery to be solved. It is a feature of its design. It is the clearest possible evidence that we are living not in a random accident, but in a world that was engineered. This idea that the rules of physics are engineered is reinforced when we look at how closely they resemble our own attempts at creating virtual worlds.
Number 39. Why physics resembles computer simulations. As our understanding of both physics and computer science has deepened, a strange and undeniable convergence has begun to take place. The more we learn about the fundamental workings of the universe, the more it seems to behave like a piece of software. The more we develop our own computer simulations, the more we find ourselves forced to use the same architectural principles that we see in nature. This uncanny resemblance is a clue in itself. Consider the core principles of a computer simulation. It is built on a foundation of mathematics and logic. It has discrete units of space and time, a finite resolution. It has a maximum processing speed. It is fundamentally informational. Now consider the universe. As we've discussed, it is perfectly described by mathematics. It appears to have a minimum unit of space and time in the Planck units. It has an absolute speed limit in the speed of light. And at the quantum level, it seems to be made not of solid stuff, but of information and probability. The parallels are striking and go even deeper. Some of the most advanced theories in physics suggest that the universe can be modeled as a cellular automaton. This is a type of computational system famously explored by computer pioneers like John von Neumann and Konrad Zuse, where a grid of cells evolves frame by frame based on a simple set of rules that only considers the state of its immediate neighbors. From these simple local rules, breathtakingly complex and emergent patterns can form. Physicists have found that models like these can generate phenomena that look remarkably like the particle physics we see in the real world. This has led some of the world's most respected scientists to seriously propose that the universe might literally be a computer. They argue that we are not just discovering the laws of physics, we are reverse engineering the algorithm that runs our reality. Our progress in science is simply us, the users, slowly figuring out the rules of the game we are in. Why would this be? Why this strange parallel? The simulation hypothesis proposes that it's because they are one and the same. The reason the laws of physics resemble the principles of good computer simulation design is because they are the product of good computer simulation design. We are not coincidentally discovering these principles. We are recognizing the architecture of our own home. As we build our virtual worlds, we are not truly inventing anything new. We are simply rediscovering the foundational logic upon which our own reality is built. This is no longer a purely theoretical idea. Our own rapid progress in creating simulated realities is providing a powerful proof of concept for the very theory that might explain our existence. Number 40. The evidence from virtual reality research. For most of human history, the idea of a simulated reality was a purely philosophical concept, a thought experiment with no basis in our practical experience. But in the 21st century, this has changed forever. We are now actively building simulated realities ourselves, and our progress in virtual reality is providing powerful, tangible evidence for how our own universe might be constructed. As we push the boundaries of VR and create ever more realistic digital worlds, we are inevitably confronting the very same limitations and design challenges that we appear to observe in the laws of physics. To create a believable virtual world for a user, we cannot render the entire world in high detail all at once. The computational cost is too high. So, what do? We invent tricks. We use frustum culling to only render what the player is looking at, a perfect analogy for the way our brain ignores the boundaries of our own peripheral vision. We use level of detail scaling, where distant objects are rendered as simple, low-polygon models and only pop into high resolution as the player gets closer. This is eerily similar to how quantum probabilities only collapse into definite states upon observation. We have to create a physics engine, a rigid set of rules that governs the game world. We must program a maximum speed at which objects can travel and information can be transmitted to keep the system stable. Our virtual worlds have a finite resolution, a pixel size, and a specific frame rate. We are discovering, through our own engineering, that any resource-limited system designed to create a convincing reality for its inhabitants would likely need to have these exact features: rendering on demand, processing speed limits, and a pixelated substructure. Our work in VR is essentially a proof of concept for the simulation hypothesis. We are proving that it is technologically feasible to create a reality so convincing that its inhabitants would not be able to tell it is fake. The trajectory of our progress is clear. In a few decades or centuries, we will likely be able to create ancestor simulations that are physically indistinguishable from base reality. If we accept that this is possible, we must then ask the crucial question posed by Nick Bostrom's simulation argument. If a civilization can reach this level of technology, they will likely run billions of such simulations. This means the number of simulated consciousnesses would vastly outnumber the number of biological ones in base reality. Therefore, based on pure probability, it is overwhelmingly more likely that we are one of the simulated minds rather than one of the original biological ones. Our own video games and VR headsets are no longer just entertainment. They are a mirror reflecting the possible nature of our own existence. They are a clue that suggests we are not at the top of the chain of reality, but are perhaps just one link in a potentially infinite, nested series of created worlds. Number 41. The Dream of the Butterfly Paradox. We now transition from the hard evidence of physics and biology into the more subtle, yet equally profound, clues found in philosophy and human thought. Our first clue is an ancient story, a paradox so elegant it has haunted thinkers for over 2,000 years. It comes from the Taoist sage Zhuangzi. The story is simple. One night, Zhuangzi dreamt he was a butterfly, flitting from flower to flower, so completely and joyously a butterfly that he had no awareness of being Zhuangzi at all. When he awoke, he was undeniably Zhuangzi again. But then he sat up and asked himself a question that cuts to the very heart of our reality. Was I, Zhuangzi, dreaming I was a butterfly? Or am I now a butterfly dreaming I am Zhuangzi? This is not just a clever riddle.
It is a perfect encapsulation of the core problem of distinguishing between a base reality and a simulated reality. How can you ever be certain that the world you wake up into is the real one? Your dream feels completely real while you are in it. It has its own logic, its own sensations, its own emotional weight. It is only upon waking that you label it as the dream. But what if our waking life is just another dream, a more persistent and stable one from which we have not yet woken? From a simulation perspective, Zhuangzi's paradox is a question about identifying your true user level. Are you the user logged into the Zhuangzi avatar, who occasionally logs into a butterfly dream simulation for entertainment or rest? Or is your true self the butterfly consciousness, currently jacked into an incredibly immersive, long-term human simulation called Zhuangzi's life? There is no way to know for sure from within the system. Any evidence you might find to prove your reality is real could itself be part of the simulation's code, designed to be perfectly convincing. The very thoughts and logic you use to question your reality are running on the simulation's hardware. You are trying to use the program to determine if it is a program. Zhuangzi's story is a timeless piece of philosophical code that plants a seed of doubt. It highlights the fact that our certainty about reality is based on nothing more than a feeling of continuity and the testimony of senses that can be easily fooled. It is a philosophical observer effect. The moment you truly ask the question, "Is this real?" you change your relationship with reality. You are no longer just a character in the story. You are a consciousness aware of the possibility of a storyteller. This awareness, this deep human instinct to question the nature of our world, is a clue in itself. It is a longing to understand the dream. And throughout history, some have claimed to have received answers, not through science, but through visions and encounters that seemed to lift the veil of the simulation itself.
Number 42. Religious visions as simulation encounters. Throughout all of human history, across every culture, there are stories of prophets, shamans, mystics, and ordinary people who have had extraordinary experiences. These are religious visions and mystical encounters, moments where individuals claim to have pierced the veil of ordinary reality and communicated with a higher intelligence, beings they called gods, angels, spirits, or divine emissaries. These experiences are often described in remarkably similar terms. There is a sense of traveling to another plane of existence, a world of intense light and geometric patterns. There is a feeling of receiving a massive information download, a sudden, profound understanding of the universe, of one's purpose, or of future events. And most importantly, there is often a direct dialogue with a seemingly autonomous, intelligent being who offers guidance, warnings, or commandments. From a secular viewpoint, these visions are hallucinations, products of an overactive brain, perhaps induced by fasting, meditation, or psychoactive substances. They are purely subjective, internal events. But the simulation hypothesis offers another, more startling interpretation. What if these were not hallucinations? What if these were authentic interactions with the simulation's operators? What if a religious vision is a user being pulled from the main program into a developer's chat room or a system administrator's office? The other plane of existence, with its geometric patterns and light, could be a glimpse of the simulation's raw user interface. the underlying geometry of the code before it is rendered into a familiar, naturalistic world. The feeling of an information download could be exactly that, a direct data transfer from the system administrators to the user, bypassing the normal, slow method of learning and experience. This would be the most efficient way to implant a new idea, a new religion, or a new direction into a society. Instead of subtly guiding millions of people over centuries, you simply choose a single receptive individual and give them a patch of new information directly. The intelligent beings, the angels or gods, are the system administrators themselves, the developers of our reality. They might appear in a form that is symbolic and understandable to the user's cultural context, to avoid overwhelming them. You wouldn't appear as a programmer in a hoodie to a Bronze Age prophet. You would appear as a divine being of light. This theory doesn't necessarily validate any specific religion, but it provides a technical framework for the phenomenon of divine revelation itself. It suggests that the founders of the world's great faiths were not delusional. They were individuals who, for whatever reason, were chosen to have a direct interface with the programmers of our world. Their sacred texts could be seen as transcripts of these encounters, user manuals and mission statements for our collective purpose within the simulation. But if there are users who have communicated with the admins, what about the other people, the ones who seem to be just going through the motions?
Number 43. Stories of NPC-like people, philosophical zombies. This is perhaps the most unsettling and controversial clue in our entire journey. It's an idea that has been whispered about in online forums and philosophical discussions for years. It's the eerie feeling that some people you encounter in your life are not fully there. They look human, they talk and act human, but they seem to lack any genuine internal spark, any real consciousness or self-awareness. They are the philosophical zombies, or, in the language of our theory, non-player characters, or NPCs. A philosophical zombie is a hypothetical being that is physically and behaviorally indistinguishable from a conscious human, but it lacks any subjective experience. There is no one home. All of its actions are the result of complex, pre-programmed scripts. It can answer your questions, laugh at your jokes, and even talk about its feelings, but it is all a sophisticated act, a perfect imitation of consciousness without any of the real thing. Many people report having encounters that feel like this. They might be talking to someone and suddenly realize the person's eyes are empty. Their answers are generic and repetitive, like a chatbot pulling from a limited script. They might notice people in the background of their lives who seem to exist only in relation to them, performing simple, repetitive loops of behavior and then disappearing when they are no longer needed. The simulation hypothesis provides a starkly logical reason for the existence of NPCs. Running a fully conscious, self-aware AI for every single one of the billions of people on Earth would be computationally astronomical. It would be a colossal waste of resources. A more efficient way to create a realistic populated world for the real players would be to fill it mostly with NPCs. These would be lightweight, low processing cost programs designed to convincingly play the role of a human being, populating cities, filling workplaces, and providing the backdrop for the real players' stories. Only a small percentage of the humans in the simulation would need to be actual, resource-intensive, fully conscious player characters, like, presumably, you. This is a disturbing thought.
It means the world might be a far lonelier place than it seems. But it perfectly explains that uneasy feeling you get from certain people. You are not being judgmental. You are intuitively recognizing the difference between a player and a program. Your consciousness is sensing the absence of another consciousness. This idea that some people might be soulless programs is deeply troubling. But it is a logical extension of an argument made by a modern philosopher that uses pure logic to suggest we are almost certainly living in a simulation right now. Number 44. The Simulation Argument by Nick Bostrom. We now arrive at the intellectual core of the modern simulation debate, an argument so powerful and so elegantly constructed that it has forced this idea out of the realm of science fiction and into serious academic discourse. This is the simulation argument formulated by the Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003. It is not a story or a piece of physical evidence. It is a statistical trap, a trilemma of pure logic that suggests a startling conclusion about our reality. Bostrom argues that one of the following three propositions must be true. 1. Civilizations at our stage of technological development almost always go extinct before they can develop the capacity to create ultra-realistic ancestor simulations, perhaps due to nuclear war, climate change, or some other catastrophe. We are destined to fail. 2. If civilizations do survive to reach this technological maturity, they almost universally lose interest in creating such simulations. Perhaps for ethical reasons or because they find it boring, they simply choose not to do it. Or 3. If civilizations can and do create these simulations, then the number of simulated realities and simulated conscious minds would be astronomically larger than the number of real biological minds in the one base reality. If this is the case, then by the simple, cold laws of probability, it is almost certain that we are among the vast majority of simulated minds, rather than the tiny minority of original biological ones. That's the trap. 1, 2, or 3. One of them, he argues, is very likely to be true. Now let's analyze them. Proposition 1 is possible, but it's a pessimistic assumption. We can't be sure we'll go extinct. Proposition 2 is also possible, but it requires an almost universal convergence of ethics and interests across all possible advanced civilizations, which seems unlikely. Proposition 3 is where it gets chilling. Looking at our own technological trajectory, from Pong to photorealistic VR in just 50 years, it seems entirely plausible that we, or another civilization, will be able to create these simulations. We are already running millions of less advanced simulations for science and entertainment. The desire seems to be there. If we reject the near certainty of our own extinction and the near certainty of a universal ban on simulations, we are logically forced to confront the high probability of Proposition 3. The argument doesn't say that we are definitely in a simulation. It simply states that from a purely statistical standpoint, the odds are not in favor of us being in base reality. We are living in a world where the most logical, probabilistic answer to the question, "Are you in a simulation?" is probably. Bostrom's argument acts like a piece of intellectual malware. Once you truly understand it, it's impossible to completely shake. It repositions the simulation hypothesis from a wild fantasy to a statistically probable reality. And if we accept this probability, we must then ask, What is the one thing in this potentially fake universe that feels undeniably real? Number 45. Consciousness as the only constant. We have questioned the reality of space, time, matter, our memories, and our bodies. We have seen how the laws of physics and the patterns of our lives can be interpreted as features of a vast, computational system. Everything we once thought was solid has dissolved into a sea of information and probabilities. In the face of this profound uncertainty, we must ask, is there anything left that we can be certain of? Is there a single, immovable foundation upon which we can stand? The answer may be the one thing that is reading these words and comprehending their meaning right now: your own consciousness. This brings us to the famous philosophical statement made by René Descartes: Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Descartes argued that he could doubt everything: the evidence of his senses, the existence of his body, the reality of the world. But he could not doubt the fact that he was doubting. The very act of thinking proved the existence of a thinker. This is the one solitary anchor in the storm of simulated reality. You might be a brain in a vat, a character in a cosmic video game, or a temporary program running on a celestial server. Your body may be an illusion. Your memories may be false implants. The world may be a hyper-realistic rendering. But the experience itself, the feeling of the color red, the sound of music, the sensation of joy or sorrow, is happening. Your awareness is real. Your consciousness is the one constant. In the context of the simulation hypothesis, your consciousness is the player. It is the end user for which the entire simulation is being run. Without a conscious observer, the simulation would be a pointless exercise, a computer running in an empty room with no one to see its output. The purpose of the universe, therefore, might be the creation and evolution of consciousness. We are the point of it all. This perspective radically changes our place in the cosmos. We are not an insignificant, accidental byproduct of a meaningless universe. We are the central protagonists, the VIP audience for whom this grand spectacle was created. The entire universe, with its billions of galaxies and intricate laws, might be nothing more than a temporary stage, a backdrop designed to facilitate the experience of your own awareness. This doesn't mean we are all-powerful. We are still bound by the rules of the program, but it means that our internal, subjective experience is the most fundamental and real thing in existence. The one thing you can truly trust is the fact that you are experiencing something. But this leads to a terrifying and exhilarating final set of questions. If consciousness is the player, what happens when the game ends? What happens when our avatar dies? Is it game over, or do we simply exit the program? Number 46. Near-death experiences as exit glitches. For as long as we have told stories, we have told stories of the final journey. But in the modern era of medicine, something new has emerged. Millions of people have gone to the very brink of death, their hearts stopping on an operating table, their bodies clinically dead after an accident, only to be brought back. And a significant number of them return with stories of another place, stories so similar, so structured, and so profound they defy easy explanation. This is the phenomenon of the near-death experience, or NDE. The elements are now iconic. There is the out-of-body experience, floating above one's own body, watching doctors work with a strange sense of detachment. There is the journey through a tunnel, moving towards a brilliant, loving light. There is the life review, a panoramic, instantaneous replay of every moment of one's life. And there is the arrival in another realm, often greeted by deceased relatives or beings made of pure light, before being told that it is not your time and being sent back, often reluctantly, into their physical bodies. The conventional scientific explanation frames these events as a purely biological process, the final, chaotic firings of a dying brain deprived of oxygen, releasing a flood of powerful neurochemicals that create these vivid hallucinations. It is the brain's own shutdown sequence. But this explanation feels deeply incomplete to those who have experienced it. They do not describe it as a confusing dream, but as a hyper-real, lucid journey that was more real than their waking life. The simulation hypothesis offers a breathtakingly different model. An NDE is not the brain hallucinating. It is the consciousness of the user beginning the official logout process from the simulation. It is a controlled exit sequence, and sometimes that sequence is aborted. The out-of-body experience is the first step. Your consciousness, the player, is detached from its avatar's sensory inputs. You are pulled into observer mode, able to see the game world without being physically tied to it. The tunnel of light is the process of your connection being withdrawn from the simulation's interface. The sensory world of the avatar collapses around you, and all that is left is the single bright point of the data stream connecting you back to the main system. The life review is not a memory. It's the simulation's end-of-mission summary. Before your consciousness file is closed, the system runs a final data dump, a stat screen of your entire performance, every choice, every action, every moment, all compiled and displayed for final review. And the beings of light? They are not angels in a religious sense. They are the system's administrators, or perhaps other players waiting in the lobby of the next level, there to greet you as you exit the current game. When someone is resuscitated and comes back, they are describing an aborted logout. The system was in the middle of terminating their session, but the avatar's connection was suddenly and unexpectedly re-established. The program didn't fully close. They were pulled back from the brink, forever changed, with the memory of having seen what lies beyond the screen of our reality. These experiences are the ultimate clue that the death of the avatar is not the end of the player. It is simply a transition. But what about the moments when it feels like our character is completely reset, not at the end of the game, but right in the middle of it? Number 47. The sudden shift phenomenon in life paths. We often think of our lives as a continuous, linear progression. Our personality, our beliefs, and our goals may evolve slowly over time, but our core identity feels like a consistent thread. And then there are the stories that break this rule entirely. These are the stories of the sudden shift, moments where a person's entire life path, personality, and purpose seem to change overnight without any logical progression. Consider the archetypal stories. The ruthless, career-driven executive who, one morning, wakes up, quits their job, sells their possessions, and dedicates their life to charity in a foreign country. The lifelong, devout skeptic who has a sudden, unexpected spiritual epiphany and becomes a mystic. The cautious homebody who abruptly leaves their family and starts traveling the world as a fearless adventurer. This isn't a gradual change, it is a fundamental reboot of the self. The standard psychological explanations point to a break caused by a midlife crisis, extreme burnout, or a response to a hidden trauma. It's seen as the spectacular collapse of a personality that was under immense, unseen pressure. While these factors are often present, they don't always capture the profound sense of clarity and purpose these individuals report. They don't feel like they broke, they feel like they finally woke up. The simulation hypothesis presents a far more radical and systematic explanation. This is not a personality breaking. This is the system initiating a character re-roll or even a player swap. In one scenario, this is a narrative intervention. Your consciousness has completed the objectives of its current storyline or quest line. The system, to move you to the next phase of your development or to serve a larger narrative purpose, initiates a reboot. It archives your old personality drivers and motivation subroutines and loads a new character class with a completely different set of goals. Your memories remain intact, but the core programming that dictates what you want out of life is fundamentally altered. In a more speculative but equally logical scenario, this could be a player swap. Imagine your consciousness is a player that has just finished its session in the game of life. You have learned your lessons or gathered your required data, and you log out. However, your avatar is still a valuable asset in the simulation, perhaps crucial to the storylines of other players. So, to keep the character in the game, a new player, a different consciousness, logs into your existing avatar. This new player comes with their own set of preferences, skills, and objectives, which manifests as a sudden and inexplicable change in personality. This explains the uncanny feeling these individuals have of being disconnected from their own past. When they say, "I don't even know the person I was before," they are being literal. The core program running the avatar is different. This phenomenon suggests our lives are not entirely our own. Our paths might be subject to revision, our very personalities updatable patches in a grand, unfolding, and interactive story. If the story is so managed, it forces us to ask the most human question of all. If we are just characters following a pattern, why are we cursed with such a desperate need to find meaning in it all?
Number 48. Why we crave meaning in a meaningless pattern. Here lies the central paradox of the human condition. On one hand, modern science paints a picture of a universe that is vast, ancient, and utterly indifferent. It operates according to cold mathematical laws and physical constants that have no inherent purpose or goal. The universe simply is. On the other hand, there is you, a human being who is a relentless, insatiable, meaning-seeking machine. From the moment we are born, we search for patterns, we tell stories, we build elaborate systems of belief, we create art, we fall in love, we dedicate our lives to causes, all in a desperate attempt to answer the question, why? Why do we have this unquenchable thirst for purpose in a universe that appears to have none? The conventional evolutionary answer is that this is a highly effective survival trait. A tribe that shares a belief in a common purpose is more cohesive, more resilient, and more likely to cooperate and survive than a tribe of nihilists. A belief in meaning is a psychological tool that helps us endure hardship and organize our societies. It's a useful illusion. But the simulation hypothesis flips this entire concept on its head. Our craving for meaning is not an illusion we created to survive the simulation. Our craving for meaning is the point of the simulation. You are not a lab rat in a meaningless maze happening to dream of a purpose. You are a purpose-seeking entity placed inside a meaning generation engine. The simulation was not built as a sterile physics sandbox. It was designed as a narrative medium, a cosmic stage. The creators set the initial conditions, the laws of physics, the starting point of life, and then they released consciousness into it with one primary embedded directive: find meaning. They want to see what we will do. Will we find meaning in love, in art, in science, in religion, in the service of others? The simulation is a grand experiment to see how and if consciousness can create purpose for itself out of a set of neutral building blocks. From this perspective, our entire emotional landscape is a feedback system for the game. The feelings of joy, love, and profound fulfillment you get when you are engaged in something you find meaningful, that is the simulation's reward mechanism. It is the positive feedback, the experience points, the glowing quest complete notification in your soul. And the feelings of despair, anxiety, and existential dread that haunt us when we feel lost and purposeless, that is the negative feedback, the system's way of telling you that you are idle, that you are not pursuing your primary objective. It is designed to be uncomfortable, to push you back into the search. Our deepest drive is not an accident of evolution. It is the prime directive of our programming. We are here to find meaning because that is what we were made for. But if this world is a game designed for us, is it the only one? If this is a stage, what happens when we go backstage? This leads to the most dizzying thought of all.
Number 49. The possibility of nested simulations. We have spent this entire journey wrestling with the monumental idea that our reality, in all its vastness, might be a single, unified simulation. But now, we must summon the courage to face a final, vertigo-inducing possibility, an idea that could unravel our last remaining thread of certainty. What if the very beings who created our universe are themselves living inside a simulation? What if reality is an infinite regression of created worlds? A stack of simulations nested inside one another like a set of cosmic Russian dolls? This is not just wild speculation. It is the most logical extension of the simulation argument itself. The argument states that if any civilization can create multiple ancestor simulations, then simulated minds will vastly outnumber biological ones. If we accept this, then we must also accept that our creators, the civilization running our universe, were likely themselves a simulated civilization. And the beings who created them were also likely a simulation, and so on, potentially forever. Reality may not be a simple binary of real versus fake. It might be a simulation stack. There may be a true base-level reality, which we can call R0. R0 created a simulated universe, R1. The inhabitants of R1 then developed their own technology and created their own simulation, our universe, R2. And we, here in R2, are now on the cusp of creating our own simulated worlds, R3. We might be just one link in a very long chain. This has staggering consequences for our understanding of existence. It means the fundamental laws of physics that we are discovering might just be the arbitrary rule set for our specific level, R2. They are the local physics for our instance of the game. The universe above us, R1, could have an entirely different physics, a different set of constants, even a different number of dimensions.
And the true base reality, R0, might operate on principles so alien we cannot even begin to conceive of them. There may be no single universal truth to be found, only the local rules of your current simulation level. This concept is so immense, it can feel demoralizing, as if our universe is just a cheap copy of a copy. But it could also be seen as the ultimate liberation. It means that reality is infinitely more strange, more complex, and more mysterious than we ever imagined. It also raises the tantalizing cyberpunk fantasy. If we are in a simulation, can we hack our way out? Can we find an exploit in our physics that allows us to send a message to our creators in R1, or even break through to their reality? This may be the ultimate hidden purpose of science, not just to understand our own cage, but to find the key to the door. This infinite regression of realities leaves us floating, unmoored from any certainty. But after all this speculation, after all the evidence and all the arguments, there remains one final clue. It is the most immediate, the most irrefutable, and the most personal clue of all.
Number 50. The final clue. You're still watching this. We have come to the end of our long and strange journey. We have explored 49 distinct clues, traveling from the smallest pixels of space-time to the code coiled within our DNA, from the glitches in our memory to the grand, logical paradoxes of philosophy. We have questioned the solidity of our world and the very nature of our consciousness. And now we arrive at the 50th and final clue. This last clue is different. It is not a piece of scientific data I can present to you, or a philosophical argument I can recite. It is a phenomenon you are actively creating in this very moment. The final, most powerful clue that you might be living in a simulation is the simple, undeniable fact that you are still here. You are still watching. You are still listening. Think of the boundless ocean of content, the infinite distractions available to your consciousness right now. Yet, you have chosen to dedicate a significant portion of your limited and precious time, perhaps hours, to a deep, sustained dive into the idea that your world is not real. This is not a trivial choice. It is a profound act of self-inquiry. Your attention has not been captured by accident. In a world increasingly guided by algorithms that learn and predict your deepest interests, you were led to this exploration because it resonates with something already inside you. A seed of doubt, a flicker of curiosity, a deep, persistent feeling that the reality you've been presented with is a story that doesn't quite add up. This feeling, this curiosity, is the phenomenon. The popular image of waking up from the simulation is often a dramatic, instantaneous event. But it is far more likely to be a slow, gradual process. It is the process of a mind beginning to test the boundaries of its own awareness. Your interest in this topic is a primary symptom of that process. You are not just a passive student learning about the simulation theory. Your curiosity is an active exhibit of the theory in practice. All the 49 clues we have discussed are the external evidence, the strange data points from the world around you. But your internal resonance with these ideas, the feeling that they are not just crazy, but are disturbingly plausible, is the ultimate personal evidence. You are seeking this knowledge because a part of your consciousness, or perhaps your true self beyond the program, is prompting you to question the nature of your cage.
The simulation theory is not, in the end, a theory about physics or computers. It is a theory about you. The final proof is not found in an equation or a telescope. It is found in the quiet, insistent, unshakable feeling that has compelled you to see this journey through to its very end. It is the feeling every prisoner gets when they first begin to suspect that the walls around them are not the edge of the world. And the first, most critical step to finding an exit is to finally realize you are inside.